Chapter 1895. That was something that happened dozens of years ago. Perhaps it was during a time when the void wasn't very lively, and there were no spectators who didn't mind making things bigger, nor were there anyone who would fan the flames and make things worse. At that time, there probably weren't enough people who would come to the void to look for entertainment. Thus, the beginning and end of the incident became a very secretive and unknown matter. It didn't seem like there were any waves, but it buried a time bomb in the order void that could kill at any time. That thing was as dangerous as the bubbles in one's head, and once it exploded, it was gone. And so, the void of order was gone. It had been annihilated once more than a dozen years ago. The traces left behind by the remnants of order were still shrouded in a shadow that could not be erased. Just like the mockery they left behind, even if they were nailed to their coffins, they would still roar with a hoarse voice. Die, you damned order. The above was just his own imagination. He did not know what those ink blocks were thinking, but he guessed that it would not be too far off. Anyway, their minds were filled with the thought of destroying order. They had succeeded once in dozens of eras, but it was only a little and not a complete success. They still had to work hard. Unfortunately, they were all nailed to their coffins and could not continue to wreak havoc on the order void. But it did not matter, because there were still other lackeys working hard to wreak havoc on the order void. Thinking of this, his head throbbed with pain. Order was so unlikable. Or rather, what did the heavenly god of origin do to make that one fearlessly rebel? Would it be more comfortable to work for others in the chaotic void than to work under the heavenly god of origin? As long as the chaos did not rise up and cause trouble, those immortal-like fellows basically lived a carefree life every day. They stood aloof from worldly affairs and did not affect the affairs of the world. Could it be that they also exploited their employees? He did not understand and did not know what happened back then that made them and the underworld turn against each other and allowed order to reach its present state step by step. Without those two, would the situation be better? However, this was only possible if the conditions he created were correct, or at least more than half of them. Well, it was meaningless to talk about what-ifs and what-ifs. What he needed to do was to dig out the things that had been hidden too deeply back then. To put it nicely, it was to find out the truth. To put it bluntly, it was to die with a better understanding. Since he knew the ending, he would definitely choose to die with a better understanding. After all, what he had to deal with was not only the mess of this era, but also a mess that would be even worse dozens of years later. The mess on the other side would be even more troublesome. As for why the condition he created insisted on linking all the known conditions together. After all, it was related to the void of order and the heavenly god of origin. Putting the former aside, anything related to the latter could affect the overall situation. How could there be so many things in the void that could affect the direction of the overall situation of the void when it involved the heavenly god of origin? It was like one day when one returned home from a trip to the void and saw that one's parents were in a bad mood. Either the parents had encountered something in the place where they were working, or something had happened at home. For example, the third aunt or sixth aunt had nagged too much, and something had happened to the parents on the way home. The probability of the parents being affected by something that affected the parents' mood was quite low, and it was even less likely that the parents were sulking with the little kids at the village entrance. Well, that was pretty much it. In short, the void was filled with things that could move around. Apart from the ink blocks in the void, the rest were just little kids playing with mud and toads in the village entrance to the heavenly god of origin. The main point was that if it involved the void of order and the heavenly god of origin, then it had to have something to do with the heavenly god of origin to be able to use the phrase something happened. Relationship did not mean that it was a relationship. It meant that it was either an equal position, or someone close to the heavenly god of origin, or someone who had once been close to the heavenly god of origin. At most, they would be strangers if they glanced at each other and exchanged a few words with each other. The only people in the void who were on the same level as the heavenly god of origin were the ink blocks. The former referred to the first and second generation of the heavenly god of origin, as well as the many disciples that he did not know much about. The underworld belonged to the latter. They were complete **T-sters who bravely rebelled and even pinched the order. They were truly unscrupulous. Under such a premise, there were a lot of things that happened at the same time that fulfilled the two conditions of involving the void of order and having something to do with the heavenly God of origin. If they were all independent incidents, then it was more or less enough to prove that other than the heavenly God of origin, everyone else in the void of order was a **king traitor. They stood on the stage and waved their hands, ready to fight. The order life forms below the stage all brandished their swords and shouted, "Come on down, we are all loyal subjects." To be honest, if this happened to him, he would not be done without causing 100 void tremors to sweep away the ashes of the void of order. Therefore, there is a very high probability that so many incidents could be linked to one incident. Although what he said just now was an exaggeration, it was the truth. In the previous era, when the order was defeated, the only ones who openly rebelled were the underworld. If all the underworld were truly villains and traitors, perhaps the mythological era would not have lasted for 40 eras. Perhaps there would not be an order void in the future. What if all the underworld were really villains? How could they be able to live without making a fuss or rebelling? On the surface, they seem to be putting in a lot of effort, but in reality, forget it. Let's not think about this anymore. When there are more clues in the future, we will talk about it again. Now, with the information that we have in hand, we have probably reached the limit of what we can do. There is still a long way to go. They could still slowly think about every little detail. Whether it was thinking about the past or focusing on the present, it was not a problem at all. They just had to keep moving forward. However, if that group of people exists in the void, where would they be now? In the blink of an eye, everyone was immersed in the progress of cleaning up the mess. We picked up bits and pieces of information as he cleaned up the mess to continue the topic. First of all, we can rule out the possibility that they have sunk into the void together with the void tremors. Yin Nuashing answered as she pondered, speaking whatever came to mind. If the underworld could survive, as their predecessors, they should still be alive and well in the void. As for whether they are in the chaos void or the order void, that's hard to say. Even if they're still alive, just look at the chaos concept bodies. There are 300 of them, but there's almost no chaos concept bodies in the orderly void. The chaos void is not active either, and the few times we've seen them, it was us who went to their doorstep, not them. Since we can infer that the chaos concept bodies are bound, them as their lackeys might be bound as well. The underworld is a type of wretched fence-sitter, and once they jump, they'll settle down for 100 or 80 years. They're not in a hurry to stir up trouble, and by the time they're ready to stir up trouble, the war would be over, so there's nothing for them to do. On the other hand, it's hard to say for them, they might have been suppressed along with the chaos concept bodies. Of course, there's also the possibility that they're just waiting to do something bad. If they're still alive. Hui threw the useless shard in his hand to the ground with a clang, and suddenly had an idea. According to what you said, they wouldn't be following behind the underworld or working together with the underworld against us, would they? Just like how they did not appear back then, but there were signs of them everywhere, causing chaos in the order void. Now, they're planning to do the same thing again. It's hard to say. Either way, we have to be more careful from now on. There could be an unknown force hidden in the void that was involved in the war all those years ago. Just thinking about it makes me a little nervous. Still, even if they are not active now, there are two living examples of they who survived the turbulence of the void. They might have survived as well. Things that seem to exist, but also seem to not exist, are the most troublesome to deal with. Jingyan Nua let out a long sigh. Be it the underworld or the chaos conceptual entity, they were all things that truly existed. As long as one's power was strong enough, there was nothing that one could not touch. But the they that the young man had created, although most of them believed that there was indeed a group of ill-intentioned things in the order void, it was a little scary that everything about them was a mystery. The enemy was in the dark, and I was in the light. In the war in the void, it was the most troublesome thing. Yin Nuashing let out a sound that sounded like he had just woken up. He looked up and said, "Actually, we don't have to talk so much about this stupid problem. I have a way to prove it when the time comes, and it is a 100% proof. Wait until I figure out the cause and effect. Then I will tell you in detail. Now, let's focus on the matter at hand." Way? What way? Everyone was stunned when they heard this. They had been asking this question back and forth, but they had not been able to find a way to prove it. Yin Nuashing raised his finger and pointed at his brain. She said that she might ask me to go in for a while, probably to see the situation of the core of order. At that time, I might be strung up and interrogated. No, I mean interrogated. When I'm done, I'll just ask them directly in their faces. Everyone was speechless. This is really a 100% proof method. When you can't solve a problem, ask the person involved. This is very hard to prove. Indeed, if it was something important that involved the gods of origin, wouldn't it be better to ask them directly? There was no one in the void who knew better than them what had happened back then. Of course, this method was no longer suitable in this era. Only a certain observer who would go crazy from time to time would be able to come into contact with the venerable gods who had passed away. But why did they have to mention the strung-up matter when that place was mentioned? It seemed like a certain observer who was strung up in the sanctuary of creation and watched by the gods of origin had left a psychological shadow. He touched his face and was a little worried. Isn't it a little inappropriate to ask this directly? After all, it's related to the gods of origin, and it might even be an existence that betrayed them. Although dozens of eras have passed, it's still a heavy blow to the heart when it's mentioned. Don't worry, it's not a big problem. Yin Nuashing waved her hand and said casually, "They're already more than 300 years old. They're not young anymore. They're already as old as the void. How could they be so stubborn about this?" When that person said this year's order life forms, I knew that they were already half disheartened. It wouldn't be a problem for them to ask such a question at this time. Also, trust me, if they really are traitors, they might feel a heavy blow to their hearts when they are mentioned, but they will definitely express their desire to kill them in an instant. Yin Nuashing shrugged. The war that lasted for more than 300 eras and finally stabilized the situation was messed up by a bunch of newly promoted rats. Everything collapsed, and they were almost done for. Every time this matter is mentioned, they'll get angry and want to tear the void of order apart again. Look at these idiots. They're not doing anything serious but learning from others. What's wrong with that? What's so good about other people's things? If you look down on order, don't be born on the order side. How happy would it be to be a brainless chaos soldier? They use the power of order to jump into the void of chaos and use the power of order to tear down order. What a dog-like thing. I'm always insulting dogs. A sin is sin. Why do you always think that the heavenly God of origin will destroy the void of order? We could not help but smile bitterly. This guy's resentment was not small either. Didn't she just destroy the void of order? Have you forgotten that she was the one who caused the void to fluctuate? Given her status among the heavenly gods of origin, I believe that when she makes a statement, the others will roll up their sleeves and prepare to destroy the void of order and start from scratch. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes and paused for a moment. Suddenly, she revealed a somewhat worried expression. After all, this is her. This is more or less what she means. I can feel that the two of us might be at the same extreme. Extreme. Everyone smiled bitterly. Birds of a feather flocked together. Whether it was the heavenly god of destruction or him, the two of them could not wait to destroy the void of order and turn the Yuan realm into ashes. So, it's definitely not a problem. Yin Nuashing paused for a moment. Of course, if something really happens, Jing Yin could not help but say, "Are we going to be taught a lesson by the venerable gods?" Yin Nuashing looked at him and said calmly, "Due to the fact that the void of order is very broken, although their cells have been gathered, the fragments related to them are not enough. Their power is not complete, and it seems that they are unable to use any power well. For the time being, they should not be able to do anything to me. Very well, I've become arrogant. I dare say that the heavenly god of origin cannot defeat me now. Everyone, This was the ultimate arrogance, a completely shameless arrogance. If not for the fact that none of the heavenly gods of origin were alive. If the heavenly gods of origin heard this, would they open their coffins? TSK? Yin Noashing heard everyone's nagging and waved her hand nonchalantly. If they have the ability, then open the coffins and teach me a lesson. That's great. If they teach me a lesson in the void of order, then they can also teach the underworld and those sneaky dogs hiding behind them a lesson. The war of this era is over. Everything is fine. Congratulations, congratulations. Everyone can wash up and go home to relax. If you have nothing to do, you can even gather and enjoy the scenery. I will lie in the spiritual temple for thousands of years before I come out to play with you. I will use the primordial relic to make you a pot of tea in front of them. It's a pity that I did not find any pots and pans in the end. Otherwise, I could have made 2 dishes. Everyone, she was sacrificing herself for the sake of ending things. As expected of a certain observer, she was a wolf. Anyway, they can't do anything to me in the broken void of order. I won't do anything out of boredom. Yin Noashing stuck her tongue out inwardly. Although she said that the last time she entered the void of order, he had destroyed 1/3 of the continent of origin. That girl was dissatisfied with him. Now, even if there's a real power related to them left in the void of order, well, it's either their remnant will, their avatars, or something else. Who knows? These things might be confused by the power of chaos. Then, I can't beat them, so it's better not to meet them. Everyone did not know whether to laugh or cry. After all, everyone knew that this was nothing more than an unreliable joke. It wasn't funny at all, and it even made people cry. If there was such a good thing, let alone sacrificing him, they could even sacrifice him together. It wasn't like they hadn't died before. So who was afraid of who? They could even hold hands and roll to the spiritual temple together and play cards and talk about the past. Dying for thousands of years in exchange for 100% stability in the world of order, how worthwhile would that be? The reason why they didn't entrust their hopes to others was because entrusting it to others might lead to even worse results. But if there was a guarantee that this wish could be fulfilled, then there was a 100% chance that it could be fulfilled. For example, entrusting the origin heavenly god to destroy the underworld was something that could definitely be fulfilled. If they could entrust their hopes to others, then they wouldn't hesitate to offer up their hopes along with other things. Phew, the ideal was beautiful, but the reality was maddening. It was better not to talk about those empty delusions. They had to honestly put together this pile of junk in front of them and move forward step by step. Right now, there was nothing for them to rely on, and there was nothing for them to place their hopes on. As a certain observer said, they should just move forward with despair, because despair could exist forever. If they were used to despair, they would not lose their motivation in despair. However, if they moved forward with hope, when the light of hope was extinguished, it would be the time of destruction. That was the general idea. Pillar, little Fong, bring that pillar of yours over here. Let me take a look. Hui held up a huge, broken pillar and waved at Sui Fong. This thing was broken into countless pieces as they wished. When he found out about this, his heart was as broken as the broken pillar. Sui Fong had goosebumps all over his body. Don't talk in such a mushy tone. Can't you speak properly? Sui Fong ran over with a pillar and compared the 2 pillars for a while. After a while, he sighed and put both pillars on the ground. He shrugged and said, "They are not the same." Hui grinned and turned his head to look at the ground. The ground was still a colorful garbage dump, but there were more than 10 or 20 broken pillars on the ground, like bamboo shoots after the rain. They were dug out and stuck here in the past 1 or 2 hours. It looked strange. There were a lot of pillars, and the length of these pillars ranged from 100 feet to 100 feet. But when he turned his head to look at the pyramid on the ground, well, the pillar on the surface was about 10,000 feet long. It was not only broken, but also broken into pieces. He really didn't know how it could be so perfect when it was broken into hundreds of pieces and then resonated with each other. I can't say for sure. Sui Fong scratched his head and pointed at the broken pillars around them like bamboo shoots. But you see, we did find these pillars around here. The fragments. I'm not wrong. They did come together and resonate with each other. Well, since they used 30% of their strength in the end, they may not be too far away from being complete. We looked at him. You mean they were almost pieced together just now? That's what I mean. I also find it strange. Scratching his head, Sui Feng stomped on the ground twice. Although the ground was made of broken pieces, they were very stable. It took them a lot of effort to pull out some of the pieces that were fixed firmly. Also, most of the time, a lot of things would pop out of the ground after they were pulled out. They were all interlocked with each other. Not only did they have to pull out the things, they had to separate them one by one. Then, they had to look for the pieces with similar energy. The energy difference between the pieces was not very big. It was like if there were 10,000 vertical blue long needles and one blue long needle with 2 degrees of curvature was mixed in. It would take them a lot of time to look for the pieces with similar energy. I don't know what strange thing happened down there that made the fragments of the core almost come together at the same time. If there were not too many fragments piled together, they may have followed the traces of energy and joined together. Sui Feng sighed and waved his hand. He did not want to talk about it anymore. He continued to dig 3 feet into the ground to search. Since the crisis was over, we also asked the Order warriors who were waiting outside to return to the space. This time, they even circled the area and dug with all their might. With more than 10,000 people in one place, it suddenly became a little crowded. If there were too many people, there would be trouble. For example, if someone dug out a huge fragment and moved too much, it would send someone flying. He wanted to tell himself that Sui Feng did not do it on purpose. But when he saw that the kid was trying to hold back his laughter, he wanted to rush up and put his shield on Sui Feng's face. Yin Nuoxing pieced 2 or 3 broken pillars together. When she saw that it had recovered to a height of about 1,000 feet, she heaved a sigh of relief. When she looked up, she saw the storm in the sky. The fragments that were hovering in the sky had stopped. The weight of the fragments was definitely much more than the fragments that they had pieced together. They were all swept up by the storm, making the scene a mess. It was hard to tell which were the fragments that had been pieced together several times, and which were the basic parts that had yet to be pieced together. They were all floating still in the same place without any gravity or movement, forming a ring shape with 3 layers around the center. There seemed to be something in the center of the metal ring. Sui Feng, take a look at that. Yin Nuoxing waved at Sui Feng and pointed at the large pile of metal fragments in the sky. Only then did Sui Feng and the others raise their heads to look at the sky. Earlier, when they saw the core of the Staff of Creation, they didn't pay attention to the mess in the sky. Now that they took a closer look, it was indeed a mess. Sui Feng looked around for a while, but he could not see anything. He scratched his head and asked Feng, "Which one are you referring to?" "That big pile over there. Look at the center and see if it's different from the rest. There's something moving there." Sui Feng glanced at the center and suddenly widened his eyes. After a while, he rubbed his eyes and widened them again. He looked up and exclaimed, "Ah, it's the outer shell of the Staff of Creation." Sui Feng shouted and flew up into the sky. Yin Nuoxing thought for a moment, then waved at the others and flew up as well. The 2 of them carefully passed through the pile of metal fragments in the sky, as if they were afraid that they would suddenly move and squeeze together to bury them. They took a detour to the center of the pile of metal fragments and flew toward the center of the ring. As the 2 of them went deeper into the pile of metal fragments, the piles of metal fragments around them began to expand outward. It was as if the piles of metal fragments had automatically parted to form a large hole. At the center of the hole, above their heads, there was a huge rectangular object. It was a round tower with a colorful body. From the bottom to the top, the rings were stacked on top of each other, and the rings were slowly expanding. It looked like an inverted round tower. It's inverted. It's the spire of the Staff of Creation. Oh, the spire of the ring-shaped spire slowly increased in size from top to bottom. When the length of the spire reached a certain distance, it suddenly expanded by 4 or 5 times, making it look like a funnel, flying upward along the tower of the Staff of Creation, that is to say, toward the bottom of the tower. After passing through the largest ring with a radius of 10,000 feet, one would see that this ring was actually a circular plate embedded at the bottom of the ring. In the center of the circular plate was a small hole that looked like an awl. Visually, the hole was probably 1,000 feet wide. Around the circular plate were 4 footrest-like fulcrums. That hole is the place where the core is embedded. We're putting the pieces together right below it. Sui Feng pointed at the hole in the center and then pointed to the 4 sides of the disc. Look at the 4 legs. They're used to embed the 4 rods. Yin Nuoxing nodded. By the way, does this thing even need to be supported? The structure shouldn't be so fragile that it will be bent after a single shot, right? Sui Feng was silent for a moment. Then, he covered his face and turned his head away. He said in a muffled voice, I said the same thing when I fired my first shot. Teacher went up and dismantled the 4 brackets. The next second I fired, he took a deep breath and sighed. It took me half an hour to swim back from the void. Yin Nuoxing, this thing has a recoil? A recoil that knocked me into the void. It's weird, isn't it? A creation of order has a recoil, and it's in the void. Sui Feng scratched his head and continued to laugh. Later, I heard from my teacher that there was no more space to channel the excess energy and reduce the recoil. So, he had to manually make a few extra accessories with some rules. He set up 4 brackets to hold the core on the spire and threw out the recoil as an attack. Yin Nuoxing. Suddenly, she felt that he was not crazy enough. Should he lure it again? Chapter 1896. CEO Hui said that his bottom line was too low, that he was insane. First, he did not look at himself. Second, and third, he did not look at the enemy. Third, he did not look at the enemy. Third, he did not look at himself. Third, he did not look at the enemy. Third, he did not think of leaving anyone alive when he fought, unless the situation was special. But if anyone really fought with their lives on the line, he would not kill them along with void and nothingness because it was not intense enough and there was no deep hatred between them. It was fine to just scatter their ashes, but it was also not good to cause such a big commotion and destroy the plants. As for him not looking at himself or his teammates and bombarding them indiscriminately, well, it was impossible for him to be merciful when dealing with the chaos. He would never be merciful in this life. He was also a little crazy, and the enemy was too strong. He could only rely on his full strength to maintain the situation. Unfortunately, his skills were all AoE attacks. That was why sometimes he accidentally attacked his own teammates indiscriminately. That was something that could not be helped. He had to be tolerant. Besides, wasn't he thinking of ways to increase the resistance of the Order warriors against his power? But if one were to talk about lunacy, well, that was because they had no choice but to max out their power. But right now, Sui Feng could confidently say that his lunacy was nowhere near the lunacy of the heavenly gods of origin. Just listen to what Sui Feng said. Because I accidentally maxed out my power, I didn't have enough space to install any laws to gather or channel the excess power. So, I had to install 4 additional pendants to lock the core on the spire to maximize the power output and use the recoil. After hearing this, Sui Feng felt that the heavenly gods of order and origin had a lower limit. Well, they probably didn't have a lower limit. They were just far more lunatic than him. After all, he had been fighting for 326 eras in the Chaos Era, so it was understandable that he was neurotic. This was very normal, and it was very normal. It was said that when the opponent was too strong and too difficult to handle, it was impossible to be merciful, so he expressed his understanding. Therefore, he felt that he was not neurotic enough, and he could still make some adjustments. Forget about the 2nd and 3rd level energy towers. The difference was only 50 steps and 100 steps, so the difference was not that big. He would just be responsible for maximizing the attack power of the 1st level energy towers. Let's see what he could do now. The staff of creation that was about to be assembled, the energy source that was about to be born, and the staff of origin. He had some good ideas. Your smile makes my liver tremble. Sui Feng could not help but shudder when he heard Maple's deep and joyful smile. As everyone knew, in the current calm period, their greatest threat was not from the other side of the void or the underworld. It was the threat from their own people. Yes, he almost said someone's name. Ahem. Yin Nuashing let out a dry cough and smiled sweetly. Oh, I suddenly thought of something very delightful. I can't help myself. Let's move it down. She did not know what Maple was thinking, but it must have something to do with maxing out the power. Sigh, now was the time. Maxing out the power was fine. It did not matter how dangerous the process was. As long as he could come up with something more powerful that could flatten the underworld, what harm was there in being a target? If it was damaged, they would be bettered in for 180 days at most. At the moment, the round tower of the Staff of Creation was flashing with a colorful luster. It was the movement they saw outside the 3 layers of fragments. The surging luster meant that it was still full of energy. In other words, they could immediately test its power after assembling it. Ah, no, the other one had run out of energy. As the level 2 core for secondary energy release, the energy in the round tower has not dissipated. It's probably... I think I understand. Suifeng rubbed his hands and groped for the information in his head. After a while, he patted his arm and looked enlightened. It's probably because the round tower has been put together. Yes, someone must have put the round tower together. After I put the disc together and hung it up in the sky, it's normal for someone to put it together after hundreds of years. So, the energy in the round tower as the level 2 core began to surge. When the energy increased to a certain level, the rules also began to unfold and move. It determined that it was incomplete but not disintegrated. So, it began to mobilize energy and rules to try to contact the level 1 core outside, which is the pyramid below and the few fixed pillars outside. As a result, the latter was forcibly put together by some indescribable things in the pile of fragments. Yin Nuashing, what do you mean by indescribable things? Suifeng face-bombed. Brother Feng, what are you trying to do in your final struggle? Try to gather all the energy. Activate minor, void turbulence to collapse the surroundings. Collapse whatever you can. If it's rule, order, energy form, then use the remaining energy to activate origin, chaos at full power. Something like that. That's how the Staff of Creation works. Even when the 2 cores are separated from the body, each of them remains complete, and each energy principle is complete. Therefore, both sides are attempting to guide the energy to reintegrate. They were not actually gathering the energy to fire a shot at us, but we just happened to be within the range of its cannon. That's awkward. I pretended to be ready to die, but it turned out that I was overthinking. Suifeng shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Brother Feng, even if you didn't passively absorb the energy just now, when the level 1 core of the Staff of Creation connects with the level 2 core of the Staff of Creation, they would instantly recombine and repair themselves. Well, the excess energy would blow up the surrounding space. Of course, it's not as powerful as a direct hit from the energy torrent, but the energy shockwave from the collision between the 2 sides after they are restored. The energy released when the 2 are recombined and the shockwave released after they are recombined is considered a powerful attack launched by the Staff of Creation in its final struggle. After it is forcibly restored, its energy will drop below its attack threshold, and it won't be able to release energy torrents for a while. Yin Nuashing's face twitched. So that's how it is. It was obvious that the heavenly god of creation had added a function to the Staff of Creation. It was either to trick people or to put up a desperate struggle. He had seen many self-repairing creations of order, so it was not surprising that the Staff of Creation had such a function. It was not surprising that the Staff of Creation's special-purpose energy tower, which was used to spread and maintain the domain of order, could self-repair as well. However, the fact that the Staff of Creation could destroy everything around it was very powerful, very much like the heavenly god of creation. It might take a bit of effort to move it down. Suifeng looked around the Staff of Creation and pointed at its surroundings. Look carefully. Apart from the fragments, there are many origin laws and origin energy entangled with it. It looked like a round tower with a funnel. Its surface was not completely smooth and crystallized like a mirror. On the surface, there were many circular hollow structures, and from those circular squares, one could see that it was stuffed with many mechanical parts. Looking from the inside, one could see that it was a dazzling sight. Those were all the creations of some kind of rules, and their purpose was to support this round tower. As for why they looked like dense and precise mechanical structures, TSK, how could the heavenly god of origin not know about the void of order? Perhaps during the chaos era, she happened to see a life of order that walked on this path. It was just borrowing the appearance, but in essence, it was still a pure creation of order. Only the disk that was used to inlay the level 1 core was solid and not a hollow structure. At this time, there were many fragments stuck in the hollowed-out areas, decorating it like an oversized hedgehog. It would probably take a lot of effort just to clean up this part of the fragments, not to mention that the fragments in all directions were emitting origin laws and origin energy, entangling it like a dumpling. Yin looked at the fragments for a while and said, "The fragments that are faintly resonating with the staff of creation. The fragments around it. Could they be related to the staff of creation as well? Like some kind of room or hall where the staff of creation is placed? If I'm not wrong, it should be. It should be the fragments that the staff of creation brought up when it mobilized energy and rule power to resonate with the level 1 core, triggering an energy storm. It also accelerated the repair of its room. That is, it left the fragments on the ground and did not tidy them up at all. It looks a little messy." Suifeng nodded. He had the same thought too. But let's ignore them for now. We haven't even put the Fortress of Origin together, and we don't know where to put the Staff of Creation's room. It's better to put the Staff of Creation together first. That's what you said. Yin Nuoxing tugged at a chain of order that flowed beside her. These fragments have faintly resonated. The chain of order and the chain of order are almost tangled together, telling us that they want to return to their original position. If we don't cut them off, we might not be able to capture the Staff of Creation. But if we cut them off, Suifeng's expression froze. If they cut off this part of the resonance. It was hard to say if they could piece it back together again. Even if they could use extra energy to piece it back together, it would be a lot more troublesome without this part of the energy and the guidance of the laws. By then, it would really be like playing a jigsaw puzzle. Moreover, it would not be a jigsaw puzzle with only 4 corners. It would be a super irregular jigsaw puzzle. Every piece of the jigsaw puzzle had an irregular shape, and it could be turned over and over again to distinguish the inside from the outside. Moreover, it was 3-dimensional. Just thinking about it gave Suifeng a headache. We can only put them back together for now. Yin Nuoxing sighed. Let's put together the room first. Even if we can't put together a complete room, if we can put together a quarter of a complete room, or half a complete room, the rest can be put together in a little more time, right? Suifeng scratched his head. If you say so, then it's fine. There are a lot of people down there. Let's call some people up to help. When they were busy digging 3 feet into the ground to find the remaining parts of the level 1 core, it was a relief to suddenly have another mission point open. Hui and Brother Lei were working on the level 1 core below, while Yin Nuoxing and Suifeng were tidying up the Staff of Creation. Both sides were so busy that the entire space could hear the sound of metal being forged. More than 10,000 people were working separately. Even if they were just messing around with one of the whatever rooms in the Fortress of Origins, it still took them more than 10 days to complete a powerful creation of order. This was even after the two had resonated and pieced themselves together. The most they could do was to forcefully interrupt them when they were almost done, and then suddenly double the workload to complete this step by themselves. If they didn't say that it was a ritual to comfort themselves, they wouldn't know how to smooth things over. It was simply superfluous. Originally, they could stand at the door and watch the fireworks, blowing water and laughing while watching the fireworks. How happy would that be? Now, they had to work by themselves for more than 10 days. They felt like they had suffered a huge loss. But there was no other way. God knew that something else had suddenly happened. They didn't think of it. No one thought of it. Even Yin Nuoxing, who was the one who forcefully interrupted the ceremony, didn't think of it. That's not right. If the Staff of Creation pieced itself back together, the burst of energy would definitely blow up some parts. Do you believe me? This is the energy released by the Staff of Creation. If it's strong enough, it would definitely turn some parts into ashes. Yin Nuashing suddenly raised his head and thought of an excuse. Sui Feng was stunned for a moment. After a long while, he said, "That's right. That's really lucky. Brother Feng, you're the one who passively absorbed this energy. Otherwise, it would be over. The fragments gathered around are all related to the staff of creation itself. If anything related to it was blown up, it would be not fun anymore." More than 10 days later, a huge round tower that was tens of thousands of feet tall and had a base that was more than 2,000 feet long was erected on the surface of the garbage dump. Everyone couldn't help but sigh at its magnificent appearance. They could feel a very, very, very powerful force from this round tower. Although it didn't have much energy lingering around it, just the shell of half a year's worth of energy was enough to shock them to the core. It was as if they could see a force from a long time ago flowing in front of them, causing everyone to feel a little dizzy. The ordinary order warriors were all amazed by its power, but for Sui Qing and Brother Lei, this feeling was even stronger. They could almost see a heavenly god of origin standing in front of them. This aura made them feel very nostalgic. Next to this tower, there was a bigger pit. It was a huge pit. The huge pit was really shaped like the word pit, with a diameter of 2,000 to 3,000 feet. Standing on the ground and looking down, one could see an arc-shaped wall standing in front of them. Inside the pit was a sunken basin. In the center of the basin, there was a hole that seemed to go all the way to the bottom. The hole was about 2,000 to 3,000 feet in diameter, and it became narrower as it went down. One could feel that energy was gathering in the hole in the basin, surging and erupting upward. If they guessed correctly, this tall round tower should be placed in this big pit. The pyramid stuck at the bottom of the pit just happened to be facing the hole below. The energy gathered in the hole, and the pyramid gathered together and released toward the round tower. Then, a torrent of energy would erupt from the top of the round tower. The process was more or less like this. Clang, clang. A heavy sound came from the bottom of the tower. Everyone looked away. It was Sui Feng and Yin Nuashing installing the level 1 core. Not only did they have to put the core into the hole, but they also had to install the 4 long poles that they felt were more important. They didn't want to have to swim back from the void after firing a shot at this historic moment. Yes, this historic moment was the moment when the power of the heavenly gods of origin reappeared in the world of order after more than a dozen eras. It's done, it's done, it's done. Sui Feng clapped his hands and nodded. Looking at the 4 large poles, he thought for a moment and kicked them. They didn't move at all. They were impregnable. He nodded again and said, "It's done. The energy and laws are all fixed. If we fire now, the situation I mentioned that day won't happen again." Yin Nuashing raised his head and looked at the round disc above his head. The solid round disc was flashing with light. It was filled with origin energy. The pyramid that had lost its energy was rapidly recovering its energy when it returned to its original position. The speed at which it was devouring energy. Damn, no wonder Sui Feng said that this was the movement before firing the cannon. Judging from the movement of charging energy, if it really fired the cannon at the void, it would be able to pierce through the void while it was still charging, right? Leaving the bottom of the tower, Yin Nuashing went to the side and found a hole to enter. The hollow structure was full of circles, squares, triangles, and some indecipherable patterns. Looking at the top of the tower, he could see a circular vault. Below him, he could see the other side of the disc that was embedded with the core of the pyramid. He was in the middle of the tower, and the lower end was only separated from Sui Feng by the large disc. It was a huge space. Looking down, he could see another disc with a more obvious protruding arc. The side that was embedded with the core of the pyramid was flat and not dented. At the top of the arc, there was a column that was about the size of the core of the pyramid, pointing straight to the top of the tower. It should be a structure used to release energy. Well, he couldn't say more. He could feel that when the staff of creation was gathering energy, most of the energy was gathered on the column, the disc below, and the core of the pyramid. The energy gathered by the 3 would eventually gather towards the top of the arch tower. If there was enough energy, he should be able to see a brilliant energy beam in this hollow space. And that was only the charging state. There was no way for it to recover to that extent. Even with their power, they couldn't restore the energy of the tower. They could only wait for the tower to breathe into the void to recover. After checking the situation in the tower, Yin Nuoxing returned to the bottom of the tower. Sui Feng was still fiddling with the core as if he was still checking it. How is it? Is there anything wrong with the energy core? It's fine. Just as I had guessed, the Fortress of Origins had been safely dismantled, but it was a safe dismantling and not a violent destruction. So, putting it back together would not affect anything. Sui Feng nodded and sighed. That's right. With our strength, we still can't charge it quickly. If we wait for it to slowly recover its energy through the void, we don't know when we can fire a shot. At the mention of this problem, Yin Nuoxing had a headache. It was the same for the Staff of Origin and the Staff of Creation. With their realm and strength, there was no way to use these two powerful weapons well. According to his own speculation, if they did not install 2 or 3 energy sources to charge them, it would probably take a few hours to enter a combat state before they could fire a shot. That would not do. They could not wait that long. They had to think of a way to make them be able to charge quickly and explode quickly. Although the energy source was the first choice, it still needed to be tested continuously. They didn't know much about the energy source and didn't have any information at the moment. They didn't know what the upper and lower limits of the energy source were, so they could only wait for them to come out before they could plan again. By the way, the Staff of Creation can charge itself, but the Staff of Origin doesn't seem to have this function. Yin Nuoxing scratched his chin as he remembered the 2 staffs that the God of Origin had created, the true Staff of Creation. Or could the Staff of Origin actually charge itself? No, the Staff of Creation can indeed recharge itself, but to Her Eminence, this rate of recharging is better than nothing. Well, it is indeed better than nothing. But since Her Eminence gave it this ability, and the Staff of Origin needs someone to control it to recharge it, then Her Eminence must have a deeper meaning behind it. Yin Nuoxing gave it some thought. This was better than nothing charging efficiency. Perhaps it's a race against time. In that kind of battlefield, being able to attack faster by 4 to 5 seconds means that we can make a lot of appropriate choices at the right time. For example, a surprise attack, or when the opponent is about to unleash a torrent of energy, the Staff of Creation will be fully charged in these 2 seconds. It can avoid the torrent of energy, and it can also deal damage to chaos. A few seconds on a battlefield are also very important, especially in a high-level battlefield. If we can't make it in time, we can only take a one-sided beating. Look at my Origin of Chaos. If we can't make it in time, we can only take a beating. Look at my Origin of Chaos for 7-8 seconds. It's our people who are screaming in pain. Sui Feng smiled bitterly and covered his face. That's right. Your indiscriminate attacks always hit your own people. That was what he thought at first. But after thinking about it carefully, he realized that something was not right. Every time the primordial chaos blasted the enemy with a standard time energy sweep, the enemy would suffer heavy casualties. His own people had a counter energy shield, so they could hold on for another 7 to 8 seconds in the torrent of energy. Well, he thought that Maple was going to say that if he unleashed the primordial chaos for another 7 to 8 seconds, his own people would suffer. But in fact, what he meant was that if he unleashed the primordial chaos for a few more seconds, the enemy would be wiped out completely. A void class attack was no joke. 2 to 3 seconds of continuous attack would be fatal. Every second in the torrent of energy would be as long as an era, let alone 7 to 8 seconds. Even if a high-tier premier entered the primordial chaos torrent of energy, he would be suffocated and fainted. Even if he could hold on for another 7 to 8 seconds, he would not be able to find himself after the attack ended. He would be sent flying out of the battlefield by the torrent of energy. Looks like it will take a long time to recharge. Looks like we can't fire a shot to celebrate. We have no choice but to leave this historic moment for next time. Yin Nuoxing stepped forward and patted the core of the pyramid. He grinned when he sensed its state of recharge. Then I'll take it over and study it. Since we're waiting for the energy source to be synthesized and the source law is also waiting to be verified, it's good to have something else to do. You guys can go deal with what you were doing before. Hey, wait a minute. You have to take the base away, too. Seeing that Maple was about to carry the pyramid away, Swayfong hurriedly pointed at the 1,000-meter-tall, 20,000-meter-wide crater beside him. That's an energy base that comes with the Staff of Creation. It's supposed to be placed in the Fortress of Origin before the Staff of Creation was placed in the base. But now that the fortress itself is gone, there's no place to install the base. You've always been good at dismantling things. Take it and study it. Maybe you'll find something. Ah! Swayfong laughed dryly for a while before turning his head away. We can't stop you anyway. It's necessary. It's necessary. It's really necessary. Go ahead and dismantle it. Don't call us when you're dismantling it. Our hearts might bleed if we see you exploded on the spot. Yin Nuoxing's face twitched twice. It sounded so serious. He didn't tear apart those things because he liked them. Now, he wanted to make the best use of them. He had no choice. If he didn't find a way to tear apart some things and use them, he wouldn't bleed now. If he really fought in the future, he would lose his life. All right, I'll take it with me. Swayfong watched little brother Fong carry the complete set away before landing on ground. He sighed at Brother Lei and the others and said softly, I wonder what little brother Fong will be able to come up with next time we come out. Although I'm looking forward to it right now, but I feel like little brother Fong can come up with anything after not seeing him for a while. Don't tell me we're going to be his targets in the future. TCH, it's just targets. I'll go. I'm more concerned about what kind of power I can get. Let me think. We thought for a while. How about a small staff of creation for each of us? I think it's a good idea. It's like suppressive fire. Everyone thought about it and nodded vigorously. It was a pretty good idea, provided that it could be realized. After all, it was a weapon used by the gods of origin. It wouldn't be easy for an observer to dismantle and study it. Just look at the energy source and the Temple of Origin a few hundred years ago. At that time, the sea of energy was used up. We wave his hand. All right, this accident is over. Everyone, go back to your positions. We'll continue with what we need to do. Then, we'll meet again in a few hundred years. After all, once they returned to their original positions, they would have to work for another few hundred years. No, they still had to wake up once in 100 years. Although they were talking nonsense, they still had to keep an eye on that thing, lest that explosive thing sneakily took the energy source and did something bad without them knowing. Chapter 1897. Time passed in the blink of an eye, not giving anyone the chance to react at all, perhaps immersed in their own busyness, or perhaps immersed in their own habituation. The start of countless paths was a life that represented their individual selves. They would eventually cross paths, touch and collide, and unwittingly, everything would change with time. No one would know, and no one could grasp it clearly. The void was a kaleidoscope-like world. She could see countless gorgeous lines spreading out from countless places, intertwining into a huge net in the void, densely filling up the lattice, or simply painting it into a tattered picture. She could see anything from it, nothing from it, and no matter how she wanted to see it, there was no problem. 100 million pairs of eyes could give her 100 million answers after looking at it. There was no meaning, and it was just a saying. After all, if one really wanted to look into the void, there was no meaning in itself. The so-called meaning, it was nothing more than a joke made by those lines. Just as the void itself was meaningless, those words and those answers were equally meaningless. When she came back to her senses, she found herself sitting on the high steps of the gate of the Temple of Origin. She hugged her knees and buried her face in them as if she was taking a nap. She raised her head and looked at the distant void in a daze. The gorgeous fireworks reflected in her eyes made her feel unreal, as if she was watching a story. For a moment, she couldn't come back to her senses. Just what happened? She felt as if she had heard something not so good. Drawn by the mysterious and demonic voice, she could not help but sit there and ponder about the void. Come to think of it, suddenly sitting down and pondering over the void, she kept feeling like a certain big idiot. She shook her head self-deprecatingly, her flower-like yellow dress slowly gathering as she stood up. She looked at the void that was still immersed in the clash of endless energies. her gaze shifting slightly to the rows of energy towers that resembled a wall. After a while, she looked up and bent her back slightly, only stopping when the colossal silhouette of the Origin Shrine appeared before her eyes. It seems that it's been a long time since I went to see Sister and the Big Idiot. She could not help muttering to herself. It seems that I haven't seen Sister and the Big Idiot for a long time. A long time? How long? She was not sure. Perhaps half an era, or even longer. She was busy in the void. She did not know what she was busy with. She was just busy. Either way, her sister and the Big Idiot were not too far away from her, and it was only a short walk from here to the observer space. Perhaps it was because she had such an idea, or because she felt that she was not too far away from them. She was not as restless as she was when she sent them off for the first time despite not seeing or contacting them for a long time. Perhaps it was because she had grown numb after more than 5 years of war on the front line. Shaking her head to dispel those thoughts, Yuan Kong breathed a long sigh of relief and was about to walk to the front line when she suddenly paused, fidgeting where she was for a moment before nodding. All right, let's go see them. Although she knew that they were busy with important matters day in and day out, it was rare for them to suddenly think of someone in a dark place like the front line. She was not used to holding back and not saying anything. She kept letting the words in her head and mouth, but she did not say them. In the end, she let them go back to her stomach. In the long run, she would be stuffed to death. The gateway to the observer space was at the center of Node 0, and very few people came here. Everyone knew that it was the place where the Big Idiot and the others had important matters to attend to, and would not disturb them if there was nothing important. Recently, however, there were often people coming in and out, sending in some goods and packages, and bringing out a new batch of energy towers and new energy cores. Although she knew what was going on in the observer space, really, judging for what she knew, it was simply sending in goods and bringing out the finished product. All right, the observer space could be renamed the Observer Factory. If it did not sound good, it could even be renamed the Observer Research Institute or the Observer Office. She was not afraid of the Big Idiot coming out to beat her up. He was busy and did not have the time. Yuan Kong returned from the front line and landed in front of the gate, intending to walk in carefully so as not to scare the people inside. Just as she took 2 steps, she saw a figure standing in front of the huge blue gate. It was a beautiful white gold figure. She looked up at the gate in front of her and was lost in thought. She looked like she wanted to go in, but did not move for a long time. Yuan Kong looked behind her. She had already reached the position where she could reach out and touch her directly, but she still did not respond. She could not help but pat her shoulder. Dao Tian. The person who was lost in thought suddenly jumped up in shock. She screamed and almost bumped into the gate. She quickly turned around and looked at the person who scared her with a bit of panic in her eyes. After seeing that it was Yuan Kong, she breathed a sigh of relief. Yuan Kong, you scared me. I thought it was the Big Idiot coming out. Yuan Kong was very satisfied with her frightened look. Seeing her tilting her head and smiling awkwardly, he shrugged. What are you doing here? If you want to go in, just go in. There are no restrictions here. Everyone usually doesn't come here because they know that the Big Idiot is busy inside. Yes. Dao Tian sighed and nodded. It's because I know that he is busy inside that I am a bit. Oh. Yuan Kong stared at her with bright eyes and inadvertently showed a hint of playfulness. So, is this why you stood in front of the gate for 3 hours and did not go in? Dao Tian's expression suddenly froze. His mouth was slightly open for a while before he said, You saw it? That is, all right, it's nothing. This is but. Yuan Kong waved his hand and pursed his lips. He put his hands on Dao Tian's shoulders and pushed her into the gate. You guys keep your words in your stomach every day. Aren't you afraid that one day you will die from overeating? I don't care. I just want to go in and disturb him. I came to disturb him just to disturb him. It's good that you are here. I haven't thought of anything to bring over, so I'll just bring you over. If I remember correctly, you and I haven't seen the Big Idiot for more than half an era, maybe even 1 or 2 years. It's on the way. Dao Tian. Hey, don't push me. What do you mean just bring me over? Why do you have to bring me over? Wait, I'm not mentally prepared. Don't talk. You are a gift. Doubt it. In the observer dimension, one could feel a towering wave rushing at them the moment they stepped through the gate. The waves danced together with the energy storm, and the shock waves that reverberated across the world rolled up layer after layer. Each time the energy surged, one could vaguely feel that the energy was a little stronger. Even if one wanted to sense it carefully, the sea of energy was too vast, and one could not accurately feel the slight change. What a gale! Dao Heaven covered his ankle-length hair and white gold robes. His multicolored eyes looked at the towering waves in front of him, and a hint of amazement appeared in them. The last time I came here, this sea of energy didn't have such momentum. I only knew that it was very big. Then it's true that you haven't been here for a long time. The sea of energy had already begun to churn a few years ago. How long has it been since you last came? Dao Tan pondered seriously for a while, before pinching his robes and whispering, I haven't been here since I reached Primeval. Same for Chinyu. She has now joined the Void Patrol Squad, saying that she was carrying out a mission and checking out other places in the Void to see if she could find anything. You too. Yuan Kong was about to say something, but then remembered that she had not been here since she reached Primeval as well, and so did not say anything. After reaching Primeval, everyone had become busier. So, she coughed dryly and hurriedly pushed Dao Tan forward, looking at the raging sea as they walked, and could not help but say, that said, the sea of energy has changed greatly. From what I know, it wasn't Walla. Towering waves rolled up for tens of thousands of miles, slapping on the spatial platform of the entrance from the bottom to the top. The exploding waves scattered into large, splashy umbrellas. Countless energy waves splashed up into the sky, then fell back down and drenched the two of them. Yuan Kong, who had become a drowned rat, stared blankly for a moment before finishing her sentence. It's so violent. The two drenched rats looked at each other and smiled bitterly as they tidied themselves up. Then, they followed the familiar scent to find the location of that person. The familiar location was not far from the gate, but there was obviously no one there. Perhaps he had already moved to another place. After flying on the surface of the sea of energy for quite a while, the two girls finally saw a tower that they had never seen before. From afar, they could see a figure standing under the round tower with her arms crossed and a frown on her pretty face. The two girls thought at the same time, this guy has encountered an insurmountable obstacle. Therefore, they hurriedly sped up. Idiot! Yun Nuoxing, who was deep in thought, was immersed in the boundless darkness and colorful scene. Suddenly, he heard a voice that stunned him. It took him a full 5 seconds to figure out who this unique name came from. Then, his mind slowly retreated and the tit-for-tat scene disappeared. When he opened his eyes, he saw two beautiful figures landing in front of him. Yin Nuoxing looked at them. Their eyes met, and they were silent. Yuan Kong wanted to talk nonstop, but when she saw Yin Nuoxing's lifeless and empty look, she was so stunned that she forgot to speak. She just stared at him blankly. Dao Heaven felt that the scene was a little stiff. He wanted to ease the tension, but for some reason, he couldn't open his mouth. He just stood there in a daze. After a few minutes, Yin Nuoxing moved a little and smiled stiffly. Long time no see. How have you been? Why are you free to come here today? It wasn't until the moment he spoke that the inexplicably stiff atmosphere suddenly dissipated. The two girls both breathed a sigh of relief in their hearts. Yuan Kong casually stepped forward and waved his hand. I suddenly wanted to come over today. I came to see elder sister and also to see you. Why? Are you busy? Is there anything you can't handle? Do you want to tell us? It's not like we can't help you in our free time. Yin Nuoxing's face twitched. He raised his hand and pointed to the side. There, the creation of the god of origin, the staff of creation. It can pierce through the underworld with a shot of full energy. It's 100% dangerous. Because our realm is not high enough, the charging efficiency is negative by 10 billion. I'm now having a headache about how to add a stable energy source to it. Yuan Kong didn't even think about it. She immediately put her hands together and retreated. I'm sorry to disturb you. Goodbye. I can't help you. You need to find a stronger helper. Tao heaven. Retreat. Yin Nuashing grabbed the girl who really wanted to run away. He grinned evilly. You want to run? You came all the way here and you still want to run? Tao heaven covered his face and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I haven't seen you for a while. Big brother, you seem to have become weirder. Be more confident. Remove the seam. I've always been a weird thing. He raised Yuan Kong and swung her around twice. Then he put her on the ground and looked at Tao heaven. Suddenly, he smiled faintly. Are you looking for me? This time, and last time, you've been loitering in front of the door. What are you hesitating about? Tao heaven. Huh. Yuan Kong saw Tao heaven's face instantly turn red. She covered her face and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The whole observer space, including the door, was within the range of the big idiot's senses. She was standing so close to the door. How could he not feel it? She was the only one who didn't feel that she was discovered. After chatting for a while, Yin Nuashing confirmed that the two girls were tired from the front line and came to talk to him to relax. When he heard that, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's not a wise decision to come to me to relax. Look at the things here. He pointed at the surging sea of energy below, the sunken sea and the rising seawall. The height difference could be thousands of miles. He then pointed at the staff of creation in front of him. Then he pointed at the sanctum of creation, and the sanctum of origin in the distance. Look, this place is full of explosives. Other than explosives, there are more powerful explosives. Of course, if you don't feel oppressed, well, it's okay to come and relax. It doesn't matter. Yuan Kong shrugged. The front line is just as oppressive anyway. That's true. Yin Nuashing tilted his head. If the void frontline was a place where one could relax, the frontline world. Although in the frontline world, one could see the void frontline right in front of one's eyes when one looked up into the void, and one could also see the fireworks on the front line. But as long as one didn't pay attention to it, it would be fine. If one walked around in circles in the frontline world, one could even enjoy the feeling of returning to the mortal world. When one was tired from fighting, one could go and walk around. Many Order warriors had said something similar before. Why did it sound like it was a leisure park behind a busy work area? Where's Siyu and Blue Phoenix? Yuan Kong looked around. Why don't I see them? Aren't they usually with you? Oh, they went into seclusion. Yin Nuashing said. More than 100 years ago, they said that they were inspired and ran to the node next door, hugging the energy tower and rushing to the abyssal death mist rift, bombarding it indiscriminately. After playing for 11 whole years, they said that they had some movement. When they came back, they found a place to hide and have not woken up yet. Yin Nuashing raised his finger and pointed at the sanctum of creation, and then suddenly opened his half-squinted eyes. Speaking of which, it's time today. Time? Yuan Kong and Tao Heaven watched him walk towards the row of temples and square boxes. They hurriedly followed him. What time is it? Energy source. The first batch of energy source is produced today. Yin Nuashing turned to them and said, You are lucky to run into it today. Come, let me show you. You don't know the existence of this thing yet. In the space of creation, the energy that originally filled the entire space had dissipated at this moment. The entire huge space was quiet. When Yin Nuashing and the other two walked in, they could still feel that the surrounding energy had reached an extremely low level. In the observer's space that was derived from the surging sea of energy, such a place with almost no energy appeared. It was like finding a cool place in a place where magma was surging recklessly in an erupting volcano. The moment the energy source was formed, it plundered a considerable amount of energy that could be touched. The creation space itself is well sealed, so it would not affect the outside. Most of the energy it plundered came from the void. Yin Nuashing said as he walked forward and looked up at the energy source hanging in the air. At this time, it had completely stabilized and was steadily releasing red and black light in all directions. The energy was completely restrained, but even so, he could still feel a very powerful energy coming from inside it, the feeling of facing the heavenly god of origin. At this moment, the energy source could be said to be a creation of the heavenly god of origin. As the prototype of the energy source, even if it was engraved with her divine sigils, it did not have such an effect. He did not know if something had happened during the process of remaking, something that he could not observe. Energy source. Yuan Kong looked at the 2-meter diameter energy ball slowly being put down and placed on the ground to study. He could not help but walk forward and poke at it, his eyes flashing with a confused light. I seem to have seen this thing. Yin Nuoxing suddenly turned his gaze. His face suddenly became very serious. You have seen it? When? Was it in the beginning? Yuan Kong looked at the ball in a daze, his eyes flashing, and the whispers that had been ringing frequently recently seemed to be ringing in his mind. He turned his head to look at the big idiot and whispered, I seem to have seen it in the beginning when I was in a daze, but at that time, what I saw was not like this. It seemed not this color. Turquoise? Yuan Kong frowned and rubbed his forehead with his palm. Seems. I'm not very sure, but I should have seen this thing before. Yin Nuoxing frowned. At the beginning, when she was in a daze, that was when Yuan Kong was still in the sanctum of derivation. Looking at the current situation, the sanctum of derivation created by the underworld should only be used to derive the consciousness of the abyssal death mist. However, they probably did not expect that they had inadvertently created 2 life forms of the abyssal death mist that had first gained consciousness and then turned into life. At the beginning, they had done something to the sanctum of derivation. Perhaps they used the turquoise energy source to derive and stimulate the sanctum of derivation, or something. In addition, there was another kind of power of divine annihilation that was used to affect the mist of divine annihilation. They had not figured out what it did to those distorted creatures, the sanctum of derivation. There was no way to understand this, so they could only put it aside and think that it had the same purpose as the energy source. Anyway, this time, they could almost confirm it completely. Although Qing Jun's nodes were so idle that they almost grew hair collectively, and their combat power was about to be abandoned, leaving only the basic garrison force, and all the members turned into logistics nodes. This almost proved that the turquoise energy source was definitely related to the underworld, and it was similar to their initial guess. Without the energy source, they could not bombard the void frontline indiscriminately. However, those were just guesses, and even if they guessed correctly, there was no evidence to support it. It was not until now that they got a vague answer from Yuan Kong that they could be completely sure this was really AF * king matter of the underworld. This girl had blown up her home hundreds of years ago and had not recovered until now. Do you remember anything? Looking at the confused look on the little girl's face as she frowned and tried hard to recall, Yin Nuoxing reached out and pressed her head gently. Well, I don't have anything to do with it. I only have a very vague impression of it. Perhaps I accidentally saw them take it out at the beginning. Yuan Kong shook his head, but his expression became more serious. But there are other things. Listening to the little girl talk about what had happened recently, Yin Nuoxing frowned as she listened. That weird voice, could it be something they left in your body that has been growing with you, and only now has it begun to show signs? For example, some sort of spiritual suggestion. Judging from how they controlled the consciousness of the death mist of the abyss to fuse with the manifestation, I think the possibility of that is quite high. The consciousness of the abyssal death mist was a kind of blank consciousness that was found in the sanctuary of derivation. Originally, newborn consciousnesses were all blank individuals. That was how it was. But he and the little angel had seen what the consciousness of the abyssal death mist in the sanctuary of derivation faced. Some kind of brand, the brand of things, and the brand of memories were forcibly branded in the newborn consciousnesses to catalyze their growth. The scene was no less than reciting the philosophy of the void, the grand Yuan realm, and life, with the cognition of the god of origins to a 2- or 3-year-old child who had just understood the human language. The fact that the child did not burst into tears on the spot meant that he might have the root of wisdom and suggested to throw out everything in his house. But most of them would just collapse on the spot, and then there was no then. The newborn consciousnesses were contaminated with too many unnecessary things and were spoiled. Obviously, the same was true for the consciousness of the abyssal death mist. Even if they were spoiled, there was still a part of their consciousness left, which could strengthen the combat power of the large-scale manifestation of the abyssal death mist. That was enough. He believed that the underworld had an unknown number of consciousnesses of the abyssal death mist. This kind of catalysis was obviously used to deal with all the consciousnesses of the abyssal death mist, and the little angel in Yuan Kong should be no exception. But the little angel was already a mature body when she was still in the cradle. She could judge what was good and what was rubbish by herself, and probably had already gotten rid of those things that were nagging in her head. But as for Yuan Kong, it seemed that those things were still in her head. But if that's the case, Yuan Kong looked at him confusedly. My sister had already gotten rid of them a long time ago. Why am I still? I'm already in the realm of Yuan Shi. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head. I'm not sure about this either. The two of you are unique existences in this void. There are some situations that you two are more clear about, at least more than I know about you two. Seeing the little girl scratching her head in confusion and worry, Yin Nuoxing looked at her and said, "How about this? Come in, your sister and I will check you. If there's something wrong, it's better to solve it as soon as possible. Besides, this girl doesn't move every day. It's time to let her walk." Chapter 1898. His spiritual world had not been so lively for a long time. After all, it was once treated as a hotel for a group of girls. In fact, it was almost the same even now. However, the only permanent residents were the little angel and Shuang Shuang. To be more specific, the little angel was the only person. Shuang Shuang would occasionally run outside. She had lived in a cage for a long time. She preferred to go out by herself rather than staying in one place all the time. She might go to the front line to fight, go to the frontline world for a walk, or go back to the divine court to find her family. Speaking of this, when they first met her, they thought that Shuang Shuang was imprisoned in a dark cage full of the power of rules and frost. Well, actually, they could figure it out if they thought about it carefully, but he was a few years late. Those ice cages were actually made by Shuang Shuang herself. She locked herself in there at her own request. According to the little girl, it was to not cause trouble for others. She also asked her family to keep an eye on her. After all, she had encountered all kinds of accidents and coincidences before she became a life form of origin. It was not a subjective operation of the divine court. They once thought that she was a lunatic who made a good little girl like this. In short, it was a big misunderstanding. Except for the accident that she became a life form of origin, everything else was caused by herself. Then, combined with the fact that she always liked to run outside. This was a very disciplined girl. Disciplined to let others keep an eye on her, and disciplined to like to run outside. What? Was she experiencing the feeling of an extraordinary life? Anyway, she was a very magical girl. After he fixed her into a real-life source, and now she had reached the Yuanshi realm, he no longer had any worries. Even the void could not beat her back to her original form. It could be said that except for meeting the three major problems of the void, she was in a state where she had nothing to worry about. In the past, when she was trapped, she could not help but run out, so, well, anyway, that was what he meant. He did not have any other special words. The only thing worth mentioning was that Shuang Shuang and the little angel both treated him as a hotel. One of them stayed at home all day long and did not move. When she had nothing to do, she would get up to trim the flowers and cut the grass. She would also pat the little purple soul to see when she would grow taller. Then, she would tease a group of small animals that lived in the spiritual world. The other one would go to where he was when she was tired after messing around outside. When he was busy and did not feel anything, she would sneak in and fall asleep with a snort. He did not have the energy to complain about himself. In the spiritual world, it was still a scene of evergreen mountains and rivers. Countless plants accompanied the land that was sometimes green and sometimes brown, and the undulating mountains spread out as far as the eye could see. The meandering river was also looming over the undulating terrain. The degree of distortion made it look like a long river that was constantly drifting along the mountains. Dozens of faint, colorful lights still hung in the sky, like auroras or silk across half the sky. The gradually changing colors would gradually blend into the sky and reveal little by little, rendering the sky into all kinds of colors and reflecting all kinds of astronomical phenomena. Their mansion and courtyard had long been moved from the plain by the river to a cliff more than 300 meters high. Looking around, there were only towering mountains behind them, one in front and one in the back. On one side was a low, rolling plain, and on the other side were thick mountains and layers of mountains that intersected like barriers. This mansion stood at the intersection of the two terrains. It looked like they were living in seclusion on a cliff, but in fact there was still a short distance between this place and the mountains behind them. After circling around the courtyard, they could see a path that went down the mountain and crossed this distance to go up the mountain. It seemed that the little angel had nothing better to do than to create so many details for this land. It seemed that she was bored out of her wits. But I have to correct you. The little angel fiddled with her wings, and her golden eyes flashed a ray of light at him. She smiled sweetly. This is my home, not a hotel. It's normal for me to live here. You can say that I don't like to move, but you can't say that I live in a hotel. Yin Nuashing. She had already declared her sovereignty. The observer card was a real estate in the spiritual world. It was like spring all year round, warm in winter and cool in summer. As long as you were creative, anything was possible. The new upgrade would bring you a new experience. 1 square meter only cost. This place seems a little empty. After Dao Heaven came in with Yuan Kong, he looked around. The circular city was still there, but the surrounding terrain had changed. It had become a place that stood on a cliff thousands of feet high, surrounded by cliffs. It felt like someone was tidying up the terrain and found it difficult to deal with. So, she threw it aside and waited for it to be dealt with. Although it was full of the air of an empty city, she was surprised that it still existed here. My city is still here. You left it here? Yin Nuashing glanced at her and sighed. I don't dare to touch your things. At most, I placed it in a place with good feng shui. You can come in and deal with it when you have the chance in the future. As he spoke, half of his face turned gray, and he looked like he had given up hope. He muttered, Anyway, my spiritual world is a semi-public area. What are you talking about? It's not that exaggerated. Yuan Kong patted him on the arm. When she saw that his face had softened a little, she continued, This is the family area? Yin Nuashing. Although it sounded better than a semi-public area, the family area, ugh, he was reminded of the scene when he went out alone with his family. If it's family, Dao Heaven pointed at himself. Then I'm family guest. Yuan Kong put her hands on her waist and looked at her with a smile. Of course, it's not impossible if you want to remove the last 2 words. There are many ways to say family. It's up to you to decide. Anyway, the big idiot won't care about these things. His mind is filled with explosions, and he has no time to care about these things. Isn't that right, big idiot? Dao Heaven. Oh. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes and didn't want to argue with this girl. He looked around the spiritual world and sighed again. This place was indeed not as lively as before. However, he rarely paid attention to it. The only one worth paying attention to should be the little angel herself. In the past, when CU and Blue Phoenix lived here, there was someone who could accompany her. But now, the golden Mei Mao glanced at Yin Nuashing, who seemed to be thinking about something. The little angel stretched her wings, and the tips of her feathers brushed against his face. The itch made him quiver, and he quickly came back to his senses. She then said, So, why are there so many people here today? It's about your sister. Yin Nuashing pointed his thumb at Yuan Kong, who was looking at the spiritual world with Dao Heaven and seemed to be discussing something. He said, There's a little problem. I can't figure it out, so I can only come to you. He briefly told her what Yuan Kong said. After listening to him, the little angel was silent for a while. She stood up from the chair in the courtyard and walked to his side to look at Yuan Kong. After a while, she said softly, There are indeed some traces left. Therefore, this matter had to be examined by a professional. Anyway, he could not say a word even after looking at it for a long time. He then looked at the little angel and knew. Is it really the trace of the consciousness of the death fog of the underworld? The cherub nodded. In the beginning, there were traces of such mental distortions and mental cues in my mind, but the cradle I was in, well, now that I think about it, it might have been a product of control that they created themselves, but they didn't dare to casually step into it. There were a few times when they wanted to enter, but all they did was watch from the outside, unable to step in. Perhaps it was for this reason that the mental distortions and mental cues they left behind weren't particularly powerful, and I was an unexpected product. After I took form and matured, the distortions and mental cues they left behind to deal with the initial situation were easily disintegrated because they were all unexpected situations. After Yin Nuashing heard this, he subconsciously reached out and gently pressed her head. She tilted her head to look at him and tilted her head to rest on his shoulder. After stealing a glance at her, Yin Nuashing continued to look at Yuan Kong. So Yuan Kong hasn't completely eliminated the mental suggestion until now. Is it because the suggestion is too strong and it's not unexpected enough? She and I are both life forms of the abyss death fog. Although we are no longer pure life forms of the abyss death fog under the influence of many reasons, and we have never stopped walking on the path of order, fundamentally speaking, we still belong to that side. The little angel said softly, moreover, Yuan Kong and I should belong to two different situations. I may be an unexpected product of the first generation of the evolved sanctum, and she should be one generation away from me, or several generations away. Yin Nuashing suddenly understood. The evolved sanctum was not created overnight in the underworld. They also spent a lot of time starting from scratch to the talent of this path, from the beginning to the beginning, from the beginning to the beginning, from the beginning to the grave. Ahem! They kept pulling up the level and going deeper and deeper. From this point of view, they were the same as them. Everyone did not have a fixed and confirmed power from the beginning, but slowly walked to this step today. Therefore, even if the little angel and Yuan Kong were both life forms of the abyss death fog of order, there would be differences between them. In this case, the four consciousnesses of the sea urchin world might be, even later and many generations away from Yuan Kong. Or maybe not. The heavenly god of primordial beginning who came out to patrol the underworld at that time once said that it was a product left behind many generations ago. Then, maybe they were not that far away from Yuan Kong. The difference between us. Yes, there is definitely a difference, but it is not particularly obvious, especially when we are transforming towards the order at the same time. This difference may be partly erased, she said softly, looking at Yuan Kong's back and frowning slightly. Let's not talk about the difference first, the residual spiritual suggestion and spiritual distortion. Maybe it's because it's growing too slowly. Yin Nuashing, this growing too slowly, refers to the growth being too slow, but what is it referring to? Is it the temperament? Just kidding, he did not know anyway. Yuan Kong, who was still talking to Dao Heaven on the other side, suddenly reacted and jumped over, not caring at all when she saw her big sister and the big idiot stuck together. She jumped up and hugged both of them together. Big idiot. Didn't we come in to check? When do we start? Oh. Yin Nuashing nodded and freed her hand to press on Yuan Kong's head. It's done. Your sister and I just took a look at you. Yuan Kong was stunned. Ah, it's done? Then what's the situation? Yin Nuashing rubbed her hair. Your sister said that you don't grow. Yuan Kong, okay, actually, well, you might not be. Mature, you haven't reached the mature stage yet. Yuan Kong pressed on the head of the stunned little girl and gently rubbed her hair before she exploded. But I don't know how to measure this so-called mature stage with your own standards. The little angel smiled at Yuan Kong. It'll be fine after 2 more years. Yin Nuashing and Yuan Kong. Did she really think that a child was growing? 2 more years? How many eras had it been? Although they knew that the little angel was just a saying, they probably didn't understand it at all. After all, they were the product of someone else's creation, and they were also unexpected creatures. They couldn't possibly run over to the underworld and ass here and there, right? They would probably be caught as soon as they showed their faces. See, this was why special was not a good thing when something happened. He couldn't find anyone else in the void who was in the same situation as him. The little angel and Yuan Kong were dependent on each other, but one was more confused than the other. At most, one knew that the other situation was a little special, but they didn't know how to deal with it. If it's a mental suggestion, you could just put a mental barrier on her, the little angel reminded. Me? Yin Nuoxing pointed at herself, her pretty face wrinkled like a walnut. After hesitating for a while, she looked at Yuan Kong. Then, do you dare? Yuan Kong tilted her head and asked confusedly, What's there to be afraid of? All right, Big Sister already said that this is enough. Just do it. Yin Nuoxing scratched the back of his head as he struggled. No, but origin energy. My energy now can't be separated from origin energy, and you still have about 30 to 40% of your essence as an abyssal death mist life form. It's fine. I trust you. Don't worry. Yuan Kong patted him on the shoulder casually. Seeing him frowning and smiling bitterly, she patted him on the shoulder again and said with a smile, It seems that you're still hesitating for a while. Okay, Dao Tian and I will walk around here first. Come find me when you're done. Sister, I'll leave the persuasion to you. Looking at the two girls rushing towards the city of circles, Yin Nuoxing crossed her arms and wondered. Say, when did this girl trust me so much? I still remember when we first met. She couldn't wait to bite me to death. The little angel held his pretty face with both hands and chuckled. Actually, she has been like this since a long time ago. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, or even... Her smile paused for a moment, and then she said after a while, even since that time 100 billion years ago. Yin Nuoxing, oh, that time when he risked his life to blow up the high-tier premier of the underworld. Leaving 2 layers of barriers in the spirit and soul is not that troublesome. It's just that he used origin energy, and he had to set it in the soul of a life form of order. Just thinking about it gives me a headache. Is there a big difference between this and stuffing a bomb into someone's body? There's a big difference. A bomb can't kill an energy life form, but this is an energy bomb. Well, that's the same thing. After struggling for a while, Yin Nuoxing and the little angel deduced for a while, and then called the 2 girls who were playing outside back. They merged with the little angel and put a layer of spiritual barrier and a layer of soul barrier on Yuan Kong. Since it was to deal with abnormalities that might originate from Yuan Kong's body, the 2 layers of barriers also had the effect of attacking Yuan Kong's soul. It sounded very dangerous. He tried to use other methods to try and prevent any accidents that might happen when happened. Dao Heaven stared at the dozens of layers of barriers on Yuan Kong's body and soul. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Isn't this the simple thing? Why is it so complicated? I'm scared when you look at me like this. I can't help it. Even I'm scared. This is origin energy. I don't know how many times this thing has tortured me. Although I'm used to its existence now, it doesn't mean that I won't feel dizzy when I see it go crazy. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. Go to the front line of the void and tell everyone you meet that the observer is going to explode. See how many of them don't look scared when they know me. It's an instinctive reaction to the explosion. Dao Heaven was speechless. It had seemed like that was the case. After all, it was the only designated walking explosive in the front line of the void. It was really a cleanup. The effect was even more shocking than the explosion of the void. Other people aside, when she heard that her big brother was going to explode, she did not even need to think to react. She immediately activated her most powerful energy barrier. After all, she did not know what kind of explosion he was going to explode. It might be a symbolic explosion. It might look like he was going to explode, but in fact, he was going to blow up everything except him. If he really did explode, then nothing would be left in the void. Well, she understood why her big brother left behind so many things. The core was actually the 2 layers of barriers. The rest were used to prevent them from doing anything unexpected. Be careful these days. Don't make any trouble. After that, Yin Nuoxing reminded Yuan Kong. If you feel that something is wrong with your spirit and soul, come to the observer dimension and look for me. Ugh. Yuan Kong pinched the big idiot's cheeks and pulled them to both sides. Smiling, he said, Okay, I know. I won't leave Node Zero for a while. I won't go anywhere unless I have something to do. Don't worry. Yin Nuashing turned to look at Dao Heaven. Then help me look after this girl. I'm still worried. It was rare to see the powerful and crazy big brother showing such a worried, hesitant, and restless expression. Dao Heaven felt that it was an eye-opener. He immediately agreed. Leave it to me. Watching the two girls leave the spiritual world, Yin Nuashing let out a long sigh of relief, and the little angel also got out of his body. Seeing his frown, she raised her hand and pinched his face. Okay, she's fine. I've also left a mark to watch over her. If there's anything, I'll come to you. You have to get down to business here, don't you? The energy source has just come out. You still have a lot to do, right? Oh, yes. In an instant, Yin Nuashing threw all the worries and hesitation aside. He immediately entered the state of dealing with the special task. After saying goodbye to the little angel, he also left the spiritual world. Just as he was thinking about what to do, he raised his head and opened his eyes. Hui, Sui Feng, and the others were looking at him in a daze. He was also stunned. Ah, you're awake? Hui carefully pushed the reddish-black energy source from the side to him. What happened? I just saw Yuan Kong and Dao Heaven flying out. You didn't say anything. It's a small matter. For now, it's solved. We're waiting to see what happens next. Don't worry about it for now. Yin Nuashing waved his hand and looked at them. Why are you guys here? Hey, we calculated the time and felt that the energy source is almost done. We came to see how you're going to deal with it. At the same time, we also said some embarrassing things. Hui shrugged exaggeratedly. Then he crossed his arms and said, Don't tell me you think we've forgotten about it after 100 years? Yin Nuashing. Well, a group of supervisors came. Although he didn't intend to make any big news, he felt a little uncomfortable being stared at by a group of people when he was about to start messing around. Well, he couldn't let go. After all, he needed to let go of himself when dealing with those explosives. Now that he was surrounded by a group of people, he could still let go of himself, but only a little. According to his plan, he first threw one of the collected energy sources into the sea of energy. In the boundless sea of energy, he threw an energy source that was not much bigger than a speck of dust. There was no reaction at all. However, he had already controlled the sea of energy to plunder and strip the energy from the energy source and the power of rules. After a while, there should be some other reaction. As for the remaining 19 energy sources, anyway, let's test the staff of origin and the staff of creation first. Yin Nuashing raised a reddish-black ball with a diameter of 2 meters high in his right hand. It doesn't matter if we have to dismantle them later. Let's go take a look first. If possible, of course, it's best to test the water on the spot. When they heard the words, test the water, the group's faces turned pale. Frankly speaking, they really couldn't do it this time. This was the staff of origin and the staff of creation. If they really blew them up, there would be nothing left of them. Even if Hui Jun personally carried the shield and went in a battle, he couldn't do it. Looking at how he was trembling now, it was obvious. When the energy sources could be mass-produced, they had already decided to make this thing the biggest trump card of the Void frontline. One of the trump cards. Since it was a trump card, it was just like the sea of energy that he had accumulated for 5 eras. It felt good to accumulate energy for a while, but it would be emptied in an instant. After all, it was worth it. The weight of 5 eras had already shown its effect. Now, it was time to see how much surprise this energy source would bring him. Right, he seemed to have said before that he had to prepare a batch of energy sources before charging into the underworld. When the time came, he would press all of them on the energy tower and use them as energy cores. Now, it was time to test whether this wishful thinking could become a reality. Chapter 1899. The Staff of Creation and the Staff of Origin. Just by listening to the names of these two things, it was as if they were thrown into the mortal world, they would be worshipped by countless beings day and night. They could also create gods and saints, the children of the world, the chosen ones, and the chosen ones. They could also give birth to great sex and other sacred objects. Actually, it was not wrong since they were left behind by the god of origins. As the root of order, there was nothing wrong with it in this aspect. During the mythological era, in the minds of countless order warriors in countless worlds, they had such an image, glorious, supreme, and standing at the pinnacle of existence. Apart from not being a charlatan, not being a talker, and not being professional, they were just a little crazy. If they did not torture him to death, he might be able to just a little, well, change his image a little. Just a little, not too much. Both the Staff of Creation and the Staff of Origin were personally created by them. They had been in service since the Chaos era and had been bombarding the void with Chaos cannons. As for the Staff of Origin, although it was also created during the Chaos era, it seemed to have been made in order to cooperate with the Order Warriors. Although the requirements for all aspects have been lowered, in the end, it was still a weapon that only the Order Warriors could use. As for the other users, at most, it would take a generation of inheritors and a large number of Order Warriors to work together to withstand the bombardment of the Staff of Void. It would take a lot of effort to even lift the Staff of Origin in their hands. Is that so? He wasn't particularly clear on this matter, but he was certain that the Temple of Origins was a low-level version created to coordinate with the Order Warriors, but, it didn't seem like the Staff of Origins was a low-level version of the Staff of Creation. Forget it. Let's not talk about it for now. Back to the original topic, according to the current situation of collecting the relics of Origins, well, actually, they were in a surplus state of high-precision weapons for the time being. No. He was not complaining about having too many of them. They would never complain about having too many of them. It was purely because no one could use them at all. Now, he put the items on display to see what he was carrying. The Nether Void Sword, the Rhythm of Light, the Staff of Creation, the Staff of Origin, and the Fortress of Origin that was being rapidly assembled. He did not know the specific condition of the Fortress of Origin for the time being. He would only be able to judge it after it was assembled. Leaving it aside, just the first 4 items, the Nether Void Sword and the Rhythm of Light were in a state of seemingly intact, but actually incomplete. Because he had fused with the Nether Void Sword's soul, he could unleash the sword's current, very powerful power, but definitely not at its peak. Then there was the Rhythm of Light. Although it was given to him by AI Hong Yun, the group of them had a discussion about how to use it. They decided to let him hold on to it for the time being, with the reason that they could not use it, and that it was fine for the time being. The result was not surprising at all. Then there was the Staff of Creation and the Staff of Origin. They had also discussed for a while, and, as expected, they decided to let him hold on to them for the time being. After all, they could not do anything about them either. Then he imagined the following scene. He was alone, with the Rhythm of Light in his left hand and the Nether Void Sword in his right, with 2 cannons on his shoulders. In an instant, he felt that he was fully armed to the point that he had an excess of weapons. Oh, there was also the Fortress of Origin. Then let him stand in front of the Fortress of Origin again. It was very troublesome, and also very troublesome. Those guys did not even take the castrated version seriously back in the day. They stuck a useless decorative metal bar on a tall, iron tower, and treated it as if they had tried their best to castrate it. Those guys were probably the ancestors of the phobia of insufficient firepower. They tried their best, but there was no other way. They had tried their best to weaken the power of this thing, but there was still no way to get too many warriors of order to swarm up to it. That was why it was very troublesome. If these things were done well, it would definitely increase the combat power of the world of order by a large margin. Back in the day, they were timid, overcautious, and hesitant, and did not ruthlessly destroy the Staff of Creation and the Staff of Origin, resulting in a lack of manpower. This time, he would finish what they had not finished. Sigh. Although he knew that they probably had their own concerns, which was why they did not make these things suitable for too many people to use. After all, based on the current situation, other than the underworld, there was an even scarier thing hiding behind it. Their concerns were not superfluous, so he could not say anything. But now, it was no longer the time to care about the matters of the previous era. He was talking about the matters of the world of order. So, he did not care so much. Although your reasons are very good. Swayphone wiped the sweat off his forehead. But I can still see from your expression that you just want to blow it up. Yin Nuashing thought for a moment and nodded. Of course, I will not rule out this method. If it is necessary and I can destroy them, then dismantling them is definitely the first choice. But we saw that Swayphone was sizing up a piece of art that was about to be destroyed and thinking about the value of recycling it. He was sweating profusely. But what? Yin Nuashing looked at the staff of creation and the staff of origin from head to toe. When these two things were placed side by side, it was obvious which one was the younger one. The staff of creation was 10,000 feet tall, while the staff of origin was 10,000 feet tall. However, the staff of origin could still be shrunk to be used as a melee weapon. It's just not easy to dismantle, not easy to do, not easy to do, not easy to do. The inheritors heard this and heaved a long sigh of relief. They all thought that the announcement would be made in the next second, and then they would be lit up like fireworks. Although they knew that this was not a good idea, they could not help but breathe a sigh of relief when they thought that these two things would not be lit up by fireworks. It would probably take 4 or 5 energy sources to destroy them together. Everyone was speechless. The announcement was made. The staff of creation and the staff of origin were fated to meet this calamity. They could not escape, they could not hide, and they would still die. Then there's no time to lose. With a wave of her hand, Yun Nuashing smashed the 6 energy sources into the sea of energy. Everyone who could feel the sea of energy surging and wildly gathering energy now clearly felt that it was going berserk at the speed of light. Not sure if it was because they ate too quickly and choked, but the ruckus was a little too intense. A curtain of water suddenly burst out and rose hundreds of millions of miles from the ground. It was as if the sea of energy was suddenly erected in front of them. Everyone's eyes widened at the sight, but before they could hurriedly prepare for defense, they saw that the sea of energy, which was still quite a distance away from them, suddenly rose to a dozen meters away from them. They immediately understood that the wall of water that did not come crashing down was to mark the area where the ruckus would occur, and the rising sea would be the real ruckus. Everyone hurriedly retreated before the water came crashing down. Just as they steadied themselves, they turned around and saw that the staff of creation and the staff of origin were swallowed by the rising sea without even a burp. They immediately clutched their chests and felt a stabbing pain in their hearts. Their faces were so twisted that they could not bear to look at it. They did not expect the announcement to be carried out immediately, and they were not even mentally prepared for it. That painful and twisted expression made Yin Nuashing think that they were being held down in the sea for a bath. Then, they could not watch the next step. They all covered their eyes and twisted their heads to force themselves not to look at the scene below and only listen to the strange crackling sound below. Only Hui was still watching very firmly, and as he watched, he muttered, this energy, look, that tower is being pulled out, it's being torn apart all over the ground, all over the ground. The base is melting. The core is also beginning to be corroded. Look at how it is blooming with golden light. It is struggling on the brink of death. However, it is unable to resist the sea of energy that is accumulating tons of energy and smashing it on its head. Look, it has exploded. The sea of energy destroyed the pillar of creation in one fell swoop. Beautiful, but its own energy has also decreased by at least 2/3. Maple is still throwing in energy sources. It seems that the situation is a little out of his expectations. Oh my God, he blew up the 2 specially made world orbs, and countless origin energy is gushing out. All the inheritors' faces were pale. Don't say any more. This was a public execution, forcibly executing them. This guy knew that they could not bear to see this kind of scene, but he still chose to let himself go blind, and even stayed here to broadcast with them. Listening to this made their hearts bleed. He really deserved a beating. The sound like a surging wind and clouds whistled in their ears for a whole 2 hours before it stopped. When everyone felt that it seemed to be just a little quiet down, they trembled and opened their eyes. In these 2 hours, listening to the sound of execution made their minds go blank. If they had known, they would have ignored Hui Jun from the start. Seeing how he pulled them here, they knew that it was definitely not a good thing. This guy was definitely up to no good. Is it over? Hui Feng trembled as he pulled down his hands that were covering his face. He looked around and could not help but swallow his saliva. Everyone turned their attention one step ahead of him. At this moment, they were looking at little brother Hui Feng with his arms crossed and a thoughtful expression. In front of him, there were 3 bright orbs of light of different sizes. The smallest orb had a diameter of 100 feet, while the largest had a diameter of 1,000 feet. Without exception, they were all entangled by countless chains of order and law. Yin Nuoxing looked at the 3 orbs of light with his arms crossed and could not help but click his tongue. They threw so many chains of order and law outside the construct core. TSK, TSK. This kind of defense really lives up to their name. If it wasn't for the origin energy, they probably wouldn't have been able to break it open. This thing makes me dizzy at first glance. Hui Feng moved to his side and looked at the 3 orbs of light with him. After a moment, he frowned. But it seems like it's quite different from the construct core I know. Although I can recognize that this is the construct core, I can't recognize what it is. Oh, you're talking about this thing. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head and reached into the pendant for a while. He took out a book and flipped through it for a while, but to no avail. Then, he turned his head and looked at the pale-faced people. Can you guys explain? Brother Lei shuddered as he stepped forward and looked at the 3 orbs of light in front of him with all kinds of strange eyes. He forced a smile and forced himself to look away. When he looked into Hui Feng's eyes, there was a deep sense of nostalgia. This is a unique method of weaving the construct core that is unique to the gods. You mean a layer of the construct core that has been constructed and then continue to condense with the construct core as the core, and finally form a larger construct core? Yin Nuoxing asked. You really saw through it. Brother Lei nodded and said softly, the construct core is formed by adding a layer of shell to the construct core. The construct core that has been formed will continue to spread the power of law and order around it, condensing it into a larger construct core with only a vague boundary. Hui Feng nodded. Matryoshka doll, but it's also the most standard Matryoshka doll in history. Brother Lei said, doing this is equivalent to allowing a creation to have 2 or more core structures and core nomological powers. In other words, it can be used to stack the power of the creation. Back then, Her Eminence actually taught us, but I've never heard you mention it. We've discussed similar topics many times. Don't tell me you didn't ask. Hui Feng was stunned, seeing Brother Lei and Sui Feng scratching their heads and laughing dryly. He suddenly felt that things might not be as simple as they seemed. He could not help but ask tentatively, could it be that you guys don't remember it at all? Sui Feng turned his head away, his dry voice mixed with extreme bitterness. It's too difficult. I can't learn it at all. How can I bring it up if I can't learn it? I can't bring it up. Ahem, it's not something that can be learned by holding hands. We've studied it for at least 100 million years, and in the end, we've only come to the conclusion that we've failed to learn it. Sui Feng felt Hui Jun's strange gaze and quickly waved his hand. He pointed at the 3 light orbs and smiled bitterly. Look at the structure inside. Look at every part of the structure and you'll understand it. This is not something that humans do. This is definitely not something that humans do. All right, I know it's a bit inappropriate to say this to the gods, but I just can't help but say it. I wanted to say it back then. Her Eminence, who created this damn thing, is really not human. When Yin Nuoxing heard this, he immediately tilted his head and agreed. They are not human to begin with. Everyone smiled bitterly. Although that was what she meant, it sounded a bit like she was scolding them. What's the big deal? Don't think that the countless lives in the void have chosen to adopt the appearance of humans as their surface life form. They're just putting on a layer of skin. Let's not talk about other places. Just take a look at the front line of the void and peel off this layer of skin. How many people do you think are real humans in this place? Of course, there are still a lot of humans. I'm just exaggerating. Ugh. Everyone was stunned for a moment before they smiled bitterly. The Void frontline was a place where 50% of the life forms in the Void of Order were gathered. Including the frontline world, there were countless life forms from countless worlds. Naturally, there are all kinds of life forms and races. However, everyone usually used the body of a human. This was caused by the law that the primordial god had imprinted in the Void. After they were confirmed to be this individual form when they were born, the general direction of the life forms of the entire world of order was thus determined. The human race and the various branches of the human race occupied the absolute majority, while countless other races occupied the remaining portion. However, everyone would still use the human form to wander around the Void in the end. It was considered a preference. Brother Lay coughed dryly and dragged the topic back. Ahem, back to the original topic. We couldn't remember the weaving method of the core structure. Phew, it's a bit of a failure. But after all, we're a bunch of unreliable secondhand goods. So, this is actually a very normal thing. Huey's face was blank. This group of people had already accepted this, saying indifferently. The core structure is superimposed on the root structure, but that's not all. Brother Lay pondered for a while before he turned his head and pointed at the countless chains of order and law that were circling the core structure. In fact, these chains of order and law are also superimposed on layers of the core structure and root structure. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment. His eyes surged with the light of origin energy and the light of primordial origin. Although he couldn't analyze it on the spot, he could still get a rough idea of the situation from its appearance. Oh, this is... He looked at it for a while before he reacted. Those are the power of law and order that should have been the second layer of the shell. It's just that it has been broken into pieces and made each of them into something similar to the original whole. It's just a different way of duplicating the magnitude. The core structure was divided into two parts, the root structure and a layer of shell. This had been mentioned before. The importance of the two was about the same. When the two were put together, they could unleash a greater power. The root structure of the structure accounted for at least 60% of the composition of the core structure. Although its essential magnitude did not change, this was just to make it clear how much weight the layer of shell occupied. Therefore, the shell that should have occupied 4/10 of the total was now split into thousands of pieces. Each piece was equivalent to 4/10 of the total, which was equivalent to forcibly increasing the magnitude by several thousand times. Brother Fong, it's already very impressive that you can see this step. We only understood it after a few years, but that's not the case. Brother Lay listened and nodded. I just said that it's formed by layers upon layers of the core structure and root structure. Each chain of law and order is another second layer of the core structure and root structure. Yin Nuashing's face twitched. Crazy. With a second layer as the core, there were thousands of second layer cores on the outside. Layer by layer. It was a little addictive to Matryoshka dolls. Brother Fong, what you see is actually the first generation of the creation core of the gods. Yes, that's what my teacher said. They strengthened the foundation of the first generation, turning the thousands of chains of law and order that were originally shells into second-layer cores. This is now the second generation of the creation core. He was very excited at once. He felt that his thoughts had surpassed everything. Is there a third generation? Suddenly, there was silence. Everyone was silent. Huey's heart thumped as if he had accidentally stepped on a minefield. He was sweating profusely. Brother Lay rubbed his hands gently and said in a low voice, "The third generation of the creation core, there is..." But the girl in white tilted her head and looked at Brother Fong. Netherworld, rhythm of light. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment and suddenly realized. The 12 divine swords on the divine weapon ranking were all products made by the third generation of the creation core. That was to say, they should all be the third generation of the original creation. Are you sure they only appeared in the mythological era? Oh, your era? Yin Nuashing could not help but ask this question. He was now confused by the mythological era and the chaos era. It took a lot of brain power to figure out which was which. If he asked Yuan Kong for a small notebook to record it, he would probably have to draw a lot of messy lines on it. He would also have to think for a long time before he became crazy. Ah, I'm sure of this, but it was quite early. Brother Lei nodded. He was also thinking about the time. After knowing about the Chaos era, I can understand some things by myself. The first and second generation of the Creation Core should have appeared in the Chaos era, and the third generation of the Creation Core should have appeared in the early years of our era. It was very early. Anyway, it had appeared before we became the Inheritors. When we became the Inheritors, in fact, there were only 8 divine weapons. Yin Nuoxing understood. He thought that the Netherworld also appeared in the Chaos era. However, the third generation of the Creation Core, Yin Nuoxing lowered his head and pondered. He murmured softly, "In this case, the third generation of the creation of origin has its advantages and disadvantages compared to the first 2 generations. They were not born in the Chaos era, and were not created by the rules of the Chaos era. This makes them 1 or 2 levels weaker than the first 2 generations of the creation of origin, but because of this, they have some more plasticity, I guess. It's almost the same." Teacher also gave the same answer. The third generation of the Creation Core also has a lot of merits, but if we really want to compare in power, the first 2 generations are definitely more powerful. At present, in our era, the most powerful application is the creation of origin made by the second generation of the Creation Core. As for the first generation of the Creation Core, it is the fortress of origin and the big net, which is the purpose of the domain. It seems that the direction of improvement of the 2 is also different. Yin Nuoxing looked at them. If that's the case, then the Temple of Origin was pulled down from the first generation of the Creation Core, and the Staff of Origin was made from the castrated second generation of the Creation Core? Brother Lei quickly shook his head. Oh no, the Temple of Origin was newly made, and the Staff of Origin was made from the first generation of the Creation Core. Yin Nuoxing could not help but facepalm. This mess, well, it can be sorted out. The Temple of Origin appeared later, but the Staff of Creation and the Staff of Origin were already created in the Chaos era. The former was made from the second generation of the Creation Core that specialized in the attack, and the latter was made from the first generation of the Creation Core that specialized in the domain. Probably when they were first created, they did not have much time to think about other things. Moreover, when they were first created, they must have been the best at the moment, so they used it first. When there was a better Creation Core in the future, they would think about it again. In that case, the specialization of the third generation of the Creation Core should be moldability. We felt that the atmosphere had eased a little. He scratched his head. It doesn't seem to be anything special. I thought I stepped on a minefield when I saw your reaction just now. Yin Nuoxing glanced at him. The 12 divine weapons are 12 lives. Unlike the previous 2 generations of the creation of origin, they are unique lives. Are familiar with each other, and have you seen them before? He was very familiar with the faint sadness that showed when he mentioned this. He was so familiar with it that he wanted to go crazy, manic, destroy, crush. Stop. Now is not the time to go crazy. There will be plenty of time for him to go crazy in the future. Brother Lei scratched his head. I have seen one fall in the war. Yin Nuoxing was silent. As he expected, it was not good news. All right, let's not talk about the past. He waved his hand to pull everyone out of the gloomy atmosphere and looked up at the 3 balls. We have lost a lot of things. Some saw the people they knew pass away in front of their eyes and could not hold on to anything. Some tore their own dreams with their own hands and gave up their original lives. There were also some who shouldered the fate of the destruction of their entire world and embarked on an eternal journey of loneliness. There are all of them, a lot of them. There were too many. There were too many things that happened in the void. There were too many things that were destroyed in the war between order and chaos. All of us have our own experiences. Billions of heavy experiences have brought us to where we are today. No matter what made us gather here, whether it is a blood feud or an irreconcilable hatred, since we have grasped all of it, we only need to carry it on our shoulders and move forward together. carry the wailing wishes and the unforgettable memories. Let it become the last thing we hold on to, and then destroy everything. Burdened? Burdened with what? Hui looked at Maple, closed his eyes, and sighed in his heart. Sui Feng and the others were carrying the unwillingness of the end of the mythological era and many similar emotions. As for him, perhaps he was just fighting with order. What was he carrying? He was not sure. It seemed that he had not been touched too much in his life. Ah, no, he had. He had witnessed Maple's fall and the times when he risked his life. Perhaps that was the case. What about Maple? What was he carrying? What kind of experience and hatred in his soul could make him reveal the crazy obsession that seemed to devour the entire void every time? He did not understand. Perhaps he could not understand it now. Chapter 1900. From the first-generation creation core and origin creation to the third-generation creation core and origin creation, their changes had witnessed the change in order. It was a change that was caused when the god of origin led the charge against chaos and guided the normal war. It could be said that it was a war record that recorded every little detail of the battle between order and chaos. Then it blew up at the end of the mythological era like a firecracker. Not a single record or information related to that aspect was left behind, not even a message. From then on, the legacy was severed, the past lost, and more than 300 years became a fart. It was even more tragic than him, the one who blew up his divine vessel. What a pity, what a pity. Although he knew that it would be useless even if he left behind the weaving and manufacturing method of the first generation, second generation, and third generation creation cores, the manufacturing requirements were too high to reach, and none of them could reach that threshold. Still, there was a 1 in 10 chance that he could really use that, and that to create an origin creation. Seeing how he was surrounded by 196 types of origin energy, he might really be able to touch some, just the trick. Well, he was actually overestimating himself a little. It seemed that he had yet to recover from his inflated ego, and to be frank, he really could not handle it. If the hardware was not up to par, he would not be able to squeeze through that hurdle no matter how hard he tried. Leaving everything else aside, there were the first generation and second generation creation cores before him. To be precise, they were the staff of origins and the staff of creation, with the creation cores of the first generation and second generation creation cores being a generic template that required hundreds of millions of points of modification to turn them into the two things before him, or other things, or even more crazy things that could be used to bombard the void. He firmly believed that there were more things that could be used to bombard the void, but the two that they had come into contact with so far were probably the most important ones. But I can't tell it all. Brother Lay spread his hands and sighed at Brother Feng, his face full of gloom as he smiled bitterly. After all, there are the gods' creations, creations. Yeah. Even if we know that one of the templates is the first generation creation core and the other is the second generation creation core, we have no idea. What details did the gods fiddle with the creation cores to turn them into the staff of origins and the staff of creation? It's just like how we don't know what you did to the core of the Temple of Origins, Brother Feng, to turn it into a different form and a lot more powerful. It's the same principle. In short, it was secondary processing and secondary strengthening. The template itself was the template, and the secondary strengthening was used to determine what to do with the template. Raw material processing, easy to understand. If they wanted to understand the details, they still needed the 100 million points condition. As long as they could touch the original form of the first generation creation core and the second generation creation core, they would know how the staff of origins and the staff of creation were. It seemed that it was useless even if they could touch it. First, they could not create two types of cores, and second, even if they could create the cores, they might not be able to create the two staffs. In short, it was a waste of effort to continue exploring this aspect. They could only use what they had. There's no other way. We can only toss something out from what we have and see if it can be used. Yin Nuoxing clutched her chest and sighed wearily. The things that those damn things left behind were meant to torment them. That was not wrong. They just wanted to torment them to death. The next time they went to the shattered inner continent of origin, the newly named continent, they would plow the land of that continent again. Yin Nuashing sighed and walked forward. She reached out and touched the core of the two staffs and the base. A moment later, her eyes fell on the middle-sized core. Speaking of which, the base of the staff of creation seems to be the creation core too. Which generation are you using? This. Brother Lei and Sui Feng scratched their heads and came forward. Both of them were a little confused. The core structure of the staff of creation's base did not have the chain of order and rule that encircled the first generation and second generation creation cores. It was just a bare core nested there. It looked out of place with the other two staffs. That was why it was hard to tell. They could not tell the details. The girl in white looked at it for a while and said softly, "If I'm not mistaken, it should be the first generation." "Huh? Why?" Sui Feng turned and looked at her with a puzzled face. Second generation cores. Regardless of the conditions used to precisely shape a creation, it would be a creation with powerful offensive capabilities. Without exception, before we were placed in the soul suppression ring, the battle formation of order had undergone a replacement that was about to spread across the entire realm, replacing the original battle formation of order with a new type of core created from the second generation. It's just an example, but what I want to say is that the creation of the second generation core, no matter what it ultimately evolves into, will be extremely aggressive. The base of the staff of creation is only used to gather and focus energy, so it should be the first generation core. Yin Nuashing was enlightened. It was a victory of elimination. If that was the case, the information about the first generation creation core was the ability to specialize in domain, energy, and other aspects. It would be great if he could tinker with something. When the time comes, he could strengthen the Temple of Origins and the Frontline's Order domain by another level. The power of countless Order warriors would continue to be strengthened. That was something worth celebrating. Well, that was just wishful thinking. It was really troublesome for him to tinker with something like that. Even the Creation Sanctum's pancake circle did not work well against them. It was the same for creations. Anyway, he felt his head buzzing after looking at it for a while. Hum. Yes, that's the buzzing sound. Yin Nuashing suddenly opened his eyes and lowered his head to look at his body. As expected, he saw the light of the origin energy shining brightly. This beautiful color, this vast energy movement. It was like there were waves rolling up and down in his body. It rolled up the stormy waves and thundered his soul until it was charred on the outside and tender on the inside. Everyone was stunned when they saw him enter deep thought. It took them 3 seconds to recover from their blank state of mind. Then they all said, "Oh," in their hearts. Then, with a tacit understanding, they retreated 8 to 10 meters away and quickly prepared their defenses. Hui craned his neck and shouted, "Phone, what's going on? Give me a definite answer. What level of explosion? Is it the level of explosion that pierces the void, or the level of explosion that pierces the void? Or are you going to lie down again?" Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. They had already trained to have an emergency response and corresponding evasive action based on his body glowing. It made his liver hurt a little. "You're the one who's going to explode. If I'm going to explode, I'm going to hug you and explode together. You're the one who's going to explode." Yin Nuashing turned around and rolled his eyes at them. The radiance on his body was getting brighter and brighter, and the energy movement was getting louder and louder. He didn't even need to think to know that this was the origin heavenly god and the others summoning him. They were going to drag him into that place again for some unknown reason. He couldn't help but curse. "Come on, come at me directly if you can. If I shout today, I won't be an observer anymore." Wait, he was trying to forcibly break free from the second divine domain. "What's going on?" Sui Feng hurriedly asked. "Hasn't everything been fine for the past 100 years? Why did it suddenly? Is it because you came into contact with the first and second generation cores?" Yin Nuashing carefully sensed for a moment, but he couldn't figure it out. He shook his head and said, "I don't think so. The first and second generation cores are right here. Although I touched them, I didn't feel any strange energy from them this time. I didn't touch their fragments. Logically speaking, I shouldn't have been dragged in directly. I think I know. Yin Nuashing clapped his hands and understood. I was blasted by the staff of creation more than 100 years ago. At that time, I came into contact with a large amount of remnant energy and fragments of origin. Do you still remember that we glowed? It should have happened back then. Hui was puzzled. But why did it happen more than 100 years later? Yin Nuashing heard him and sighed faintly. Some people were too idle and couldn't grasp the timing properly. Maybe it took them a while to react. That's right. A while for them is equal to 100 years for us. Maybe something is trying to drag me in again. Maybe it has something to do with the first and second generation creations. Maybe it's about the core of order. After all, it's not over yet. Hui was stunned for 5 seconds before he understood. Oh, the gods of origin went to have tea with you. Yin Nuashing and the others. They felt that no matter how they heard it, it was very strange. They were a group of people who had passed away, and they were always looking for a living person to drink tea and chat. It was strange. This was quite strange. Moreover, when the people who had passed away looked for the living to chat, didn't they usually chat in dreams? Why was it that here, they directly dragged the person in? It's over. The more they thought about it, the more horrified they were. Yin Nuashing pulled her hand away from the core of creation and threw them aside. She used energy to create a barrier to prevent energy leakage. Then, she took out a bed made of energy from somewhere and lay down on it. She raised her right hand and waved goodbye to everyone. Anyway, they're going to stream me up again. I'll go over first. Help me see if there's anything in the core of creation. Snore. Everyone was speechless. She slept so fast. The quality of her sleep was really good. The surging light of the origin energy suddenly disappeared. Someone who was waving goodbye just now had her hand hanging down. From afar, it looked like she was struggling for her life, but died with her eyes wide open. She had just breathed her last and passed away peacefully. Damn, I can't say that. I'll be sent to the void of chaos to be buried. Anyway, that guy was used to going in and out. It shouldn't be a big deal. Unfamiliar the first time, familiar the second time. Hui said calmly. I think that guy's used to it. Just look at how quickly he took out the bed. He's just short of finding a coffin. Sui Feng could not help but sigh. Brother Feng is also working hard. He's a busy man both inside and outside. There's no peace anywhere. Everyone sighed in unison. Indeed, he was the #1 laborer in the void. He was not treated like a human either inside or outside. His consciousness sank into the shattered land. He could not see his surroundings clearly, as if he was in the clouds. He was used to such a scene. Every time he came in, he felt as if he was climbing out of the clouds. He waited quietly for a while. When the origin energy flashed again, his senses experienced a wave that was not particularly strong. He could feel that he was floating as if someone was pulling him out of the sea of clouds and fog. This time, the feeling was stronger. They probably did not intend to test him carefully and just dragged him out of the ground like a carrot. Puff! The sound of something breaking through the clouds and the air exploding rang in his ears. The fog in front of him suddenly dissipated, and a strong white light replaced the cloud-like scene in front of him. After he got used to it for a while, he felt that the light had dimmed a little. When he opened his eyes again, he could already see his surroundings. The white light was still lingering in the scene, and it was retreating bit by bit. When everything became clear, he could distinguish everything around him. In the distance, there was a huge vertical wall of clouds, and a light curtain suddenly appeared like the sky. He stood in a manner that was as familiar as ever. In front of him were 3 tables placed side by side. Hot tea was brewed on the tables. The chairs were all pulled out, but there was no one. Yin Nuashing was stunned when she saw this scene. She had come to this place several times. Generally speaking, the state and situation when one came in depended on the number of fragments one came in contact with. The more fragments one had, the more complete the view would be. Not only could he see the continent of origin, he could also see them. However, if there were fewer fragments, he would basically be wandering alone on the continent of origin and would not meet anyone. But it was a little strange. Based on what she said the last time, she should not have come in again. Ah, you're here early? The voice behind her made Yin Nuashing's heart skip a beat. She was so scared that she turned around and almost rushed up with the Netherworld Ruin sword. When she turned around, she saw the young man walking towards her. Seeing her nervous expression, the young man waved his hand and comforted her. Don't be nervous. There's no accident. Relax, it's definitely not a bad thing this time. Yin Nuashing breathed a sigh of relief. She knew that she would not return to the state of wandering alone. Okay, where are they? They were dealing with some things just now. They're all gathered in the main hall. I felt that you were about to be pulled in, so I ran out to greet you. I didn't want you to mistakenly think that you came in alone. The young man spread his hands. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment. You know that I came in alone? I know more than that. The young man covered his forehead with his hand and shook his head. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. You sat there, you ran around here, and you even walked to a place far away. In fact, we were watching you. The fragment did not continue to strengthen your current connection with this place. So, you couldn't see us, but we were watching you all the time. Oh my God. She quickly tried to recall if she did anything stupid when she came in. Damn it. She thought that she was alone when she came in, but she did not expect that there was more than one person around her. Or rather, there was no one around her. Trying hard to recall, she did not seem to have done anything stupid. Yin Nuashing breathed a sigh of relief. She patted her chest and looked at the young man. Okay, then why did you call me in this time? Is it a routine inspection? To check on the situation of the core of order? Oh, this is one of the situations. Another situation? The young man lowered his head. He seemed to be thinking about what to say next so that he would not provoke the young man in front of him into a rage. Although Yin Nuashing could not see any expression on the young man's face, the hesitation, indecision, and sneaky look made her more or less guess. She threw a sentence at the young man's face subconsciously. So, you want to string me up? Oh, you don't have to string me up this time. Cough, cough, cough. The young man responded subconsciously. Then he suddenly coughed violently and scratched his head a little awkwardly. You knew that. No, it was just a guess. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. Say it. What do you want to string me up for this time? Do you want me to cooperate with the research? Phew, I'm used to it. So, let's hurry up and don't waste time. He paused for a moment and said, Of course, if you can give me a physical anesthetic, I will be a little grateful. The young man was speechless. This little guy can't wait to faint. Okay, let me finish. This time, you don't have to string me up, cut me up, or do anything else. The young man coughed dryly. To put it simply, when the core of order in your body went berserk last time, we pulled out half of the foundation of the shattered land and pressed it into your soul to help maintain stability. Now, as the core of order is about to enter the final stage of evolution, the situation has completely stabilized. So, we don't need half of the foundation's power to stabilize it. It's also inconvenient to stuff this thing into your soul. Well, in short, we are worried that your soul will suddenly turn into an island. So, we have to quickly remove this thing from your soul. Yin Nuashing, am I a garbage dump? Why do you stuff everything into my body? Well, the situation was urgent at that time. We didn't have time to think so much. The young man shrugged. Yin Nuashing, okay, when do we start? No hurry. The young man lowered his head slightly. The white face that was facing him seemed to be sizing him up. Let's wait for you to stabilize and rest for a while. Okay, let's stabilize. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes and looked around. Then, he walked to the 3 tables and sat down casually. The young man looked at where he sat and suddenly rubbed his arms. That's her seat. I'm not listening. Yin Nuashing faced the sky. I just found a seat casually. If there's an accident, it's purely on purpose. The young man. Good fellow. Anyway, good fellow. All right. Yin Nuashing suddenly thought of something. His expression gradually became serious. He looked at the young man who was slowly walking over and pondered for a moment. I have a very serious question. Very serious. There's nothing to be so serious about. You know about the chaos era. That's not particularly serious. There's no need to be so serious about it. The young man sat down and drank a cup of tea. Then he said softly, so relax. So what's the question? Yin Nuashing took a light breath and calmed himself down. In the world of order, is there another group of people who join the chaos other than the underworld? Or several groups? The young man slowly put down the teacup and knocked it on the table. It was a pity that the young man was expressionless. Otherwise, he would have known the answer in an instant. But this slight tremor should be enough. The young man was silent for a few seconds before he spoke. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. It even felt like he had turned into another person. This is indeed a very serious question. From what you said, there is indeed. Yin Nuashing narrowed his eyes slightly. His fingers gently rubbed the teacup. After calming himself down, he continued, So, is it one group or several groups? He did not care whether the world of order was dead or alive, because he never had any hope or expectation for the world of order. He did not care whether the world of order lived or died. Anyway, that was the nature of the world of order. Even if there were other accidents, it would just be a strong survivor bias. Yes, he did not care. He did not care. He knew that he could not generalize. But he was too lazy to care. Don't ask why. If you ask, he was a lunatic, the kind that was beyond cure. The world of order had nothing to do with him. He only cared about how many people had pledged to join the chaos void. The young man, this, including the underworld, there are a total of 2 groups. Ironically, they have a lot of connections with us. It is also because of our connections that they finally embarked on the path of chaos. The voice came from the side. Yin Nuashing turned his head, and, as expected, he saw her walking over slowly with a few people. She walked closer and deliberately looked at him. She saw him looking at her for a long time, as if she was a little bothered that he had taken her seat. However, she did not look at him for long, and pulled another chair from the side to sit next to him. Yin Nuashing was a little surprised. He was actually mentally prepared to be grabbed by the collar and thrown out. 2 groups of people. Bringing the question back to the original topic, Yin Nuashing felt mentally and physically exhausted when talking about this matter. He couldn't help but roll his eyes and let out a long breath. With both hands on his cheeks, he put on a half-dead look. What exactly did you do to them? Just as you guessed, it was something related to the Chaos era. In order to destroy chaos and protect order, it was necessary to gather forces in advance. I didn't expect. When Yin Nuashing heard her speak softly, he saw that it was rare for her to not even be able to drink her tea. Furthermore, he could sense that these origin heavenly gods were faintly releasing their anger. Just as he had thought, putting aside whether or not their hearts would be heavily injured when this topic was brought up, once it was brought up, they would definitely want to cut these bastards into 1,000 pieces before pressing them into the void and beating them to death. But why? What's the reason? Reason. For other life forms, they do need a reason to act. But for them, they don't need a reason. The youth sneered. It's just their nature. Life forms born in an unstable void are born with many changes and unpredictable. But that was the answer we learned later. At first, we did not know that the void of order would be like this after it was reconstructed. Moreover, after the void of order was reconstructed, chaos had a tacit understanding with us and had a temporary truce. We knew that fighting now would not produce any results, and they were still looking for an opportunity. So, we did everything we could to block any opportunity that might appear. After a series of measures were taken, the void of order was calm. The order life forms born in the chaos era were born with the knowledge of the existence of chaos, which was different from the order life forms of the new era. It was also the most crucial difference, which caused the void of order to develop into an overly stable environment. We all knew that this false peace would cause serious consequences, but by then, we couldn't find a way to change it. We couldn't force a hole in the void of order to welcome the chaos concept entity in, right? Could it be that we had to say, come here, you fight here, we fight together, we fight together? If that happened, they might just blow a hole in the void of order and continue to fight. Order was reorganized without any preparation at all. It's just like hitting a wooden club. Yin Nuashing. To put it simply, the initial plan was far from the actual situation. Then, she would mutter to the void in confusion, You guys better get moving. Don't do this. It's not good for anyone. I told you not to do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. I'm going to give you a hard order, more or less. Just thinking about it made her blood pressure soar. After that, we continued to guide them step by step until we finally pointed at the void of chaos and told them the true situation of the void. It's just that we didn't expect that the beings of order in the new era would be like that. It's almost the same as what we thought at the beginning. Their overly peaceful life had caused them to have too many unnecessary things. Suspicion, betrayal, scheming, useless schemes, self-righteousness, lofty ambitions but short-sightedness, contradictions that made them seem like neurotics, which then led to large-scale civil strife and strife. I'm not joking with you, but the beings of order at that time were all like that. The first batch of beings of order that were born in the new era were like that too, just like the taunts left behind by the other side. They did not usher in a better environment as we expected, and all they got was a mess. The youth waved his hand, trying to lighten the atmosphere. That's about it. And the most extreme examples are the two that you know. But in reality, there should only be one. Yun Nuashing continued. The first ones to betray order were the first batch of neurotics, and the underworld was under their influence. Oh, you know about it? You've already understood it to this extent? The youth suddenly sat up straight, and the others also looked at him attentively. You've seen them? No, I don't know who they are. I only know about the underworld. Yin Nuashing shrugged. It's all a guess, picking out information from many clues and piecing it together bit by bit to form a condition. Although it's very far-fetched and forced, I seem to have guessed it right. To be able to piece together those fragmented information and piece together the truth is already very impressive. The youth nodded slightly and crossed his fingers on the table. And, to tell you the truth, they are also still alive in the void. I've also guessed it. Yin Nuashing's eyes were empty as she spoke with an exhausted expression. If the underworld can survive, what's more, those guys who are standing behind the underworld, talking crazily and pointing fingers. I've guessed it, it's not surprising. But can you guys do something? To be honest, I don't have the confidence to deal with two at once. Can you guys give me some happy information? Oh, there's really something. The youth coughed softly. The happy news is that you don't have to face them directly. You still only have to deal with the underworld. Yin Nuashing looked up. Seal? Well, it's not surprising that I know about it after getting the information from above. After all, they probably haven't been active for more than a dozen eras. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. So far, it was consistent with what he had guessed. Is there any news that makes you happier? Well, it's nothing much. The battle between you and the underworld is the main battle between order and chaos this time. We and them have temporarily withdrawn from the stage and left the battle to you. This is the scheduled event that we've concluded after summarizing the current situation. They won't appear because someone has held their heads down so that they can't poke their heads out at will. Although that's the case, their shadows behind the underworld can't run away. Maybe they have some way to communicate with each other temporarily. Yin Nuashing was stunned and looked up in surprise. Someone held them down? Didn't you guys hold them down? The seal that was left behind erased all the connections between them and the Dayuan realm. They can't move easily. However, countless years have passed. For them, who are protected by chaos, the seal can be shaken. She said softly and turned to look at him. Someone is still alive in the void and is confronting them. Yin Nuashing's eyes widened. It's someone from that time? The remaining power of order from that time? Yes, it should be some of the people who stayed in our family. It's not the 147 of us. It's the children who lived with us. They're not exactly the inheritors, but they're equivalent to inheritors. In short, they're family members. The young man said while twirling his fingers. Then he frowned slightly. Let me think. Under the circumstances that the war ended in such a way, the people who are most likely to stay, the people in the residence, are probably that group of children. Then, if it's them, one of them is most likely to be the person in charge. It should be. The young man frowned. She said softly, it should be serene. Yin Nuashing. Chapter 1901. The name Gu seemed to have dragged him into a maze of memories and thoughts. He stumbled into thousands of identical passages and intersections, but he could not find an exit no matter how hard he tried. He ran in vain, trying to find the little bit of light that illuminated the path ahead in the darkness. But he could only watch himself gradually sinking into the darkness, leaving a head full of fog. He lost himself and blurred the boundary between reality and fantasy. He could not tell where he was floating at this moment, like a body of energy that had been crushed. When it dispersed, he floated in that space, and only his consciousness could maintain the feeble activities. Xianyin. This name had a huge meaning to him, and it had a huge karmic connection with him. That karmic connection originated from the memories that he had left related to her, as well as the knowledge that she had of him. Both of them were not things that could be faked. However, it seemed that this was the only connection they had. He had no way of understanding more, and even if he wanted to, he could not find any way. When he came to the Age of Darkness, he had thought that perhaps he could uncover everything related to himself in this era. He had also tried to find her existence, but unfortunately, he still could not find any traces related to her. Then, yes, of course, her existence should be traced back to the previous era. When he heard Xianyin's name from their mouths, he understood that this seemed to be a logical and natural thing to do. But in this way, the karmic entanglement between him and her would be brought back to that era, because she was mentioned by the god of origin. As he said, their existence was bound together, and the time she was in was the time he was in, the mythological era. Even if the god of origin said that he might be a special non-human thing born in that era, sorry, he really did not have any memory of it. So, this non-human thing explanation to himself was that he was a something like a consciousness without a real body. In fact, his personal understanding was more inclined towards this answer. After all, he really could not pick up any fragmented memories of the mythological era, and he felt that he did not actually appear in the mythological era. Sorry, but he really did not have any memory of it. So this non-human thing explanation to himself was that he was a something like a consciousness without a real body. In fact, his personal understanding was more inclined towards this answer. After all, he really could not pick up any fragmented memories of the mythological era, and he felt that he did not actually appear in the mythological era. His mind was in a mess. To sum it up, even if he was really related to the mythological era, he might not have been a real life at that time. Yes, that was what he meant. That was how he interpreted the phrase, he existed in the mythological era. But if he could confirm that the string notes were indeed related to the mythological era, it would prove that he had been active during the mythological era. In other words, it would overturn his own belief that he was not an unformed thing, but a living being in the truest sense of the word, and probably had even wandered the divine realm for some time. Then, here came the problem. He really did not have a single memory of the mythological era, not even fragments. The bits related to the string notes did not count, because he did not know that it was a matter of the mythological era. It was only now that he learned about it that he could categorize it. No, maybe it was just someone with the same name. Even if there weren't a whole bunch of people with the same name in the god realm, there should be a whole bunch of them hanging in the void, right? Moreover, Xianyin's full name wasn't Xianyin's name. Besides, he might have heard it wrongly. The defenses left behind in the residence could have withstood the impact of the end of the war. It should have no problem withstanding the tide of chaos. The young man stroked his chin with his right hand, and, judging from the forces left behind, Xianyin and musical temperament were in charge of setting up the defenses in the residence. They were in charge of setting up the defenses, so it was only right for them to be in charge. Thud. Upon hearing the two words, musical temperament, Yin Nuashing collapsed on the spot. His movement was so big that it startled everyone. When they turned around, they saw him getting up from the ground with a messy and dumbfounded look on his face. They were all stunned. Their pretty faces trembled so quickly that they looked like they were about to cramp up. Who did you say was in charge? The young man was stunned for a moment. Puzzled, he said, that girl, Xianyin. Why? Why do you have such a big reaction to this name? You like her just from the name? Yin Nuashing opened his mouth and stuttered for a while. His face was full of cold sweat, and his face was stiff. Holding on to his last shred of hope, he said, Xianyin. Her full name is Xianyin? The girl's full name is Ouyang Xianyin. But we just call her Xianyin because we're used to calling her Xianyin. It feels a little awkward. The young man noticed that there was something wrong with his expression. It was very, very wrong. Even when he met them, he didn't look so wrong. The little guy looked as if he had been pressed into the chaos to wash his face. With a face full of doubt, he asked, Why? Do you know something? Yin Nuashing twisted half of his body and leaned back. He covered his eyes with the back of his hand and sucked in cold air. He looked like he was half dead. I don't know. I'm not. I can't be. So, why is Xian the manager of your residence? Why? What do you mean by why? There's no why. As I said just now, she and Yilu were responsible for setting up the defense of the residence. So now that we're all dead, Xian took over the defense set up by her own power to ensure the stability of the residence. What's so strange about that? The young man was confused. I don't think that's what he meant. The girl turned her head and glanced at him. Then, she looked at Yun Nuashing, who obviously had a problem. Are you trying to say why Xian has something to do with us? Yun Nuashing continued to lean back and cover his face with the back of his hand. His head stiffly nodded. Oh, that's a story. That girl appeared in the origin continent out of nowhere, and we don't know where she came from. To put it simply, we found her at our own doorstep. Ah, no, we found her in our own backyard. The young man nodded and said, Oh, that's right. That's right. She was very confused when I woke her up. She said she was looking for her brother. However, none of the 147 of us knew her. We didn't know who the brother she was talking about was. Her memory was very blurry. When we checked her later, we found that her spirit and soul seemed to have suffered some kind of damage. It seemed to be a one-time damage left behind by some kind of impact. The damage to her spirit and soul often made her confused. In the beginning, she couldn't remember who we were. Even after we cured her, it remained like this for quite some time before she gradually got better. Injury? The young man scratched his head. Ah, you guys were in charge of looking after her. By the time I found out, you guys had already taken care of her. At first, she was really confused. We didn't know what was going on. But since she appeared out of nowhere and spirit and soul were injured, it could have happened if these two conditions were met. He was probably involved in some incident in the void. He was caught in the explosion of energy in the void. He either touched the space barrier or was tortured by the sea of time. Finally, he was thrown out. When he came out, he didn't know where he was. This is normal. Every year, there are many people who get lost in the void. Even the heavenly God of the beginning can get lost. It's not surprising, not surprising. It's not surprising. The girl rolled her eyes at him. Like I said, when we found Xianyin, the girl was not injured at all. How could she be unscathed after being caught in the dimensional barrier and the sea of time? Only her spirit and spirit were injured. The young man said maybe she had some kind of defensive barrier on her back then, but it couldn't protect her mind and soul. After all, when we saw her, the little girl was just a mortal. When mortals come into contact with that level of power, even if they have an energy barrier to protect them, they can't withstand it. It will directly cause some minor internal damage. Oh, that's true. The young man shrugged. Anyway, the girl lived on our continent after that. At first, she was not used to it and kept mumbling about her brother. We had no choice but to take her to various places in the void to try and find places she knew. After about half a year, the girl suddenly said that she remembered the realm of the gods. But when we took her there, she did not have much impression of the realm of the gods and could not find many familiar things. It was also a time of war, so we could not stay for too long. We just took it as a tour of the realm of the gods and set up some defenses. After that, we took her back to our continent and left her at home to fight. She remembered the realm of the gods, but was not familiar with it. The girl muttered, Could she really have been tormented by the sea of time? If she's alone, then it's possible that she came from another time. She put down her teacup and denied it softly. There is no aura of time entanglement. Oh, then maybe she had been asleep for a long time? She had been unconscious in the void for a long time before she came out of our backyard. That doesn't make sense. The young man scratched his head. The girl was immortal at that time. She did not eat or drink and just floated in the void. She would have either suffocated or starved to death. That's strange. Why didn't we talk about this at that time? We were busy dealing with chaos. So, everyone let out a no. When faced with the crazy chaos, ordinary things were almost thrown aside and dealt with in the future. But they did not expect to throw it aside all the time. It was not until such a long time ago that they heard the little guy in front of them mentioning it that they brought it up again. That's right. Why is there something wrong with this little guy all of a sudden? He still looks half dead. That's weird. Feeling that she was being stared at by the gods of origin, Yin Nuashing took a deep breath. She rubbed her pretty face hard a few times before she heaved a sigh of relief. She did not know what kind of expression she had on her face. She did not know how to explain it either. So, she decided to start from the most fragmented memory. Is there a big tree in your house? A very, very big tree. Its color was bright and a little dazzling, just like the feeling when the primordial energy fuses together. A big tree that was filled with dazzling lights. Ah, you mean the primordial tree? That tree was left behind from the chaos era, but it was broken when we were fighting. The young man stood up and looked around. He then pointed to the cloud, fog, and mountains on his right. Look over there in the center of the forest. There's a big tree stump. There are new shoots growing on it. That is the primordial tree stump. Who knows how long it will take for it to grow again? I don't know what the primordial tree in the present world looks like now. Yin Nuashing stood up and glanced at the place he was pointing at. She did see a huge tree stump, but the tree stump looked like an ordinary tree stump. It covered an area of tens of thousands of feet and was about 1,000 feet tall. There were some new shoots growing on it, and the leaves on the shoots. It was indeed filled with the feeling of primordial tree stump, TSK, but the memory was too blurry. It was hard to tell if it was the same. He had seen too many similar colors, but it felt like there was nothing strange. It was unrealistic to identify the tree from a tree stump. The young man said, "Haven't you been to our continent? Although it has been bombed into a scorched earth, there are still some things left behind. Didn't you notice the wreckage?" I didn't pay attention at all. I accidentally barged in and encountered some strange things. I was already flustered. How could I have the time to look at the tree stump? If I saw that everything was fine, I would definitely run away. Everyone let out a no. That was the first time the little fellow encountered something related to them. She was inexperienced and frightened, so she couldn't hold her breath and ran away. That was normal. Unlike now, she greeted them first when she met them. Then, she scolded them while pinching her nose. Suddenly, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This little fellow had changed. Not only was she a different person, but she was also a different soul. Yin Nuashing rubbed his cheeks and continued to sigh. Everyone listened to him sigh again and again, and each sigh was heavier than the last. When they were all confused, he continued to speak. "I'm really not any of you?" The young man was stunned by the sudden question. He shook his head and said, "Although you have inherited all of our powers, it does not mean that you are one of us. It is impossible to judge from your soul. And you see, there are 146 of us here, and only he is not here. But you look completely different from him. You have maintained the original appearance of your soul, and it is far from your appearance. I'm still referring to your soul. So who is?" Yin Nuashing's face turned dark. He could not hear the name at all. She turned around and placed her hand on his. The resonance of their souls made him feel as if he had sunk into a warm embrace. A familiar aura emerged from the bottom of his heart. When she spoke again, he heard the name clearly. Roth, the head of our family's mainland. His god name is creation. You can say that he's in charge of food. Pooh. The young man counted with his fingers and muttered, "That guy has a worried look on his face every day," with his hand clasped behind his back, mumbling to the void god. "Ah, this is the void of order. Ah, this is the void of chaos. Ah, this is the void of order. Ah, this is the void of chaos. this is the void of order. This is the void of chaos. This is the void of order. This is the void of chaos. This is the void of order. This is the void of chaos. This is the void of order. This is the void of chaos. This is the void of order. This is the void of chaos. This is the void of order. This is the void of chaos. This is the void of order. This is the void of chaos. This is the void of order. This is the void of chaos. This is the void of order. This is the void of chaos. Nuashing thought about it and said seriously, I will shatter the void with one slash. Look, it's completely different. The radiance on the young man's body dimmed a little. He chuckled dryly and quickly changed the topic. It's probably because the first in command is too indecisive and too coy. He doesn't have the imposing manner that a first in command should have. That's why the second in command became a little too violent. Yin Nuashing was stunned by this very down-to-earth explanation. Who's the second in command? Everyone turned their heads and looked at her. Yin Nuashing instantly understood. Behind every manic second in command, there was a first in command who sighed and hesitated. Of course, it was not impossible to say the opposite. For the sake of balance, both of them belonged to the Berserk faction. It was easy for them to get into big trouble. Just look at him and Hui. He was busy going crazy, and Hui was busy holding him back. Yes, in the past, it was Hui who was holding him back. Now, it was a large group of people who were responsible for holding him back. Balance. Yes, balance. This was very balanced. Yin Nuashing continued to cover her eyes with her arm. Although it was down to earth, the way they addressed each other as second in command and first in command still sounded annoying. And, as I said before, you might be some kind of inhuman thing born in that era. You are different from us who were born at the beginning of the great elemental realm in the Chaos era. The time difference is too far, too far. It seems to have been said before, but isn't there still reincarnation? The young man shook his head. As I said just now, the soul is different. Even if the soul is obliterated by reincarnation, it will not change its shape and nature. Your soul is a mass of, I don't know what it is. Yin Nuashing ahem. The shape of Roth's soul is a mass of blurry light and shadow. You can see it as a ball casting a shadow under the afternoon sun. Yes, this is the scene. This is the reflection of his soul. Oh. Yin Nuashing covered her eyes. This is the first time I've heard of something like the reflection of a soul. Forget it. It's better not to think about it. After all, this is the perception of the heavenly God of origin and the others. It's how they see other people's souls. He can't see other people as such strange creatures. If he forcefully distorts his perception, something big will happen. Anyway, it's very complicated, very confusing, very unclear. Anyway, you have absolutely nothing to do with Roth. The power related to Roth in your soul is also very quiet and not very active. If you are indeed Roth's reincarnation, we can forcibly treat you as Roth's reincarnation. With this as the premise, the power that belongs to him in your soul should be extremely active. But at this moment, his power is the most active power in your soul, isn't it? Yin Nuashing turned to look at her. She also turned to look at him. Yin Nuashing covered her face and nodded slightly. Speaking of which, the young man clapped his hands. Suddenly, he noticed something and looked at her. Is it because your power is too strong that Roth's power is too quiet? Usually, he is most afraid of you. But, putting aside the power in his body, even here his power is in a quiet state. The condition does not hold. There should be other reasons. She shook her head. I don't know what happened. When Yin Nuashing heard these words, he sorted out the relationship between the top leader is in charge of the origin continent, and the second leader is in charge of the first leader in his mind for a while. Suddenly, he felt speechless. He did not know who was in charge. Then what kind of relationship do you two have? If you insist on talking about the 147 people in our family, we are all brothers and sisters. Everyone was born together, and there is not a single second difference. If we want to be a younger brother, we say so. If we want to be an older sister, we say so. If we want to be an older sister, we say so. If we want to be an older brother, we can also say so. So far, there is no one who wants to be a father or a mother because those who have had the idea have been beaten up. After all, if you want to be a father or a mother, you will be attacked by a group. Yin Nuashing continued to cover her face. The following image automatically appeared in her mind. I treat you as a brother or sister, and you want to be my father or mother. Come, let's go out and fight. I can't beat you to death. I can't beat you to death, but I can still call for others to beat you to death. We 146 people will beat you up once a day, and we will beat you up for a whole day. Just blame Harmony, River Crab. Anyway, you can call yourself whatever you want. If you're not convinced, you can rush out and fight. The winner has the final say. As for Roth, although he is overly worried and neurotic, he is still recognized as the big brother of our family. Apart from that, he is actually okay. In short, he is a silly big brother who is overly worried. As for her, irritable big sister, Yinuashing. As for how she and Roth are divided, the young man hesitated for a moment, shrunk his neck, and looked away. Stinky little brother, you are so stupid that you are incurable. Before the battle, you have already nagged me hundreds of times about losing and dying. Nonsense, as if I don't know that I can't win. Yin Nuashing continued to cover his eyes with his arm. He couldn't look anymore. The image of the heavenly gods of origin had been completely shattered and could not be pieced back together. He gave up. As expected, the heavenly gods of origin were all crazy. So that, Mr. Creator, how did you become the leader? When the young man heard this, he rested his chin on his hand and shifted his gaze to the others. When the others saw this, they also shifted their gazes and finally kicked the ball to her. They lowered their heads as if they were too embarrassed to mention it. She tilted her head and looked at him, then sighed softly. These guys don't want to be in charge. Yin Nuashing. He observed a moment of silence for a certain creator. This was a forced appointment. No wonder she called him stinky little brother. This was clearly the destined little brother. When everyone didn't want to be in charge, they pushed him up and forced him to be in charge. It was a little sympathetic. I don't care either. I only care about beating people, she added. Yin Nuashing covered his face with his arm, and his expression twisted. He seemed to have said this before. It was said to Hui. The girl did not know whether to laugh or cry. She raised her finger and pointed at herself, and then at the young man. So, it's usually us and Roth who are in charge together. What a mess. Ahem. All right, let's get back to the original topic. Anyway, many things have been revealed. The tree in his dream was the great tree of origin in the continent of origins, and Xianyin was the caretaker of that residence in the continent of origins when those unreliable gods of origin were collectively reincarnated. Therefore, Xianyin's departure all those years ago must have been to confront them and continue suppressing them. From the end of the mythological era until the 139th era, when he returned, it had never stopped. It had been almost 100 eras. Phew, just listening to it makes one's heart ache. In fact, this was good news. Part of the story about him had been uncovered. But at the same time, another more complicated problem had arisen. That was, he didn't know who he was anymore. According to them, he was some kind of non-human born in the mythological era. Very well, he did not have any impression or memory of it, so he thought that he was an unformed consciousness. But it turned out that he was not. The only explanation now was that when he was still active in the mythological era, during the war between order and chaos, he picked up Xianyin in an alley in the divine realm. After that, the crackling incident happened. In short, Xianyin might have been mysteriously thrown into the continent of origin, which was very close to the divine realm. What about him? I don't know. In that crackling incident, he might have died. That was the only explanation for now. After that, what Xianyin said when he reunited with her in the ancient era might have happened after the end of the Dark Age. I don't know what happened for now, but it probably has nothing to do with the source that I should trace back to. So, you haven't told me why you had such a big reaction to our little sister Xianyin? After ending a branch of the topic, The young man looked at him with a slightly strange expression. Yin Nuashing was startled out of her thoughts. She could sense a hint of danger in the young man's tone, just like how a brother would sound when he found out that his sister was being targeted by a dangerous person. Yin Nuashing pulled back her hand, covered her eyes and face with her palm, and said in a muffled voice, "Because I'm the brother that she was talking about." This time, it was the gods of origins' turn to be stunned. She froze in the middle of pouring the tea. The young man pressed one side of his face and said, "Hey, don't try to make things up. After all, we watched her grow up. Seeing that you're our family's, spokesperson, even if you have feelings for her, you should take the proper path. All right, you don't look like you're joking, so I won't joke anymore. But back then, how did you, I don't know, don't ask me." Yin Nuashing looked like she was about to die. Speaking of which, he did not have any feelings for Xianyin, but Xianyin did have some feelings for him, just like the girls around him. He digressed. "I don't remember what happened back then. I don't even remember when it happened in your era. I only remember that I picked her up in an alley on a rainy day. At that time, she was still very young, as if she was abandoned right after she was born. Well, it's a little blurry, maybe less than 2 months after she was born. Anyway, that's about the time. I even named her. Also, my blurry memories tell me that we lived in a relatively peaceful state for a long time. After that, I have no recollection of it at all. To be honest, the relatively peaceful state of life is a remnant of some kind of feeling. I can't tell for sure." Ah, hell. Those were the words that Xianyin told him in 139th era. She muttered about the time they had spent together and the little things that they had experienced during that time. But he really could not remember anything. But it was very strange. Chapter 1902. She was not in the Dark Age at all. She appeared in an earlier mythological era and had temporarily ended the karmic entanglement with him. Because he died without knowing why, the karmic entanglement with him was forcibly cut off, even if it was only temporarily. Furthermore, he did not have this part of memory. This was probably the so-called ending before it began. The next time they met was already in the ancient era. Ah, no, that time did not count. Xianyin herself said that she was not him. She roughly meant that he was not him in the ancient era. This was something that happened after the Dark Age ended. He could not say now, as he had not experienced it yet. He did not know what strange operation he did later on that caused him to not be himself in the reincarnation cycle. So what exactly happened to him back then that he died, just like that? Even if he knew that he was the most unlucky person in the void, it would not be surprising if he died anytime, anywhere, but he died without leaving behind any last words. That would not do. It was not like his style. Of course, it could also be that the storm of that era was too strong. His last words were cut off as soon as he screamed. Yes, that was very possible. It was normal to spit at the sky and end up smearing his own face. That was why his last words were probably only heard by himself. Ah, forget it. I don't want to care about it for the time being. Why are things in this world so messy and annoying? Can't you just give him a quick death? But I can't just ignore it. This matter is troublesome, really troublesome. Looking at the young man, burying his face on the table in a daze and did not want to face life. And then looking at Xianyin rubbing his head with one hand, as if she was stroking a cat's fur. Ugh. The young man coughed dryly to divert his attention. But we never thought that Xianyin would be related to you. We have also looked for the person who was related to her. Guess what? This mysterious way of speaking, it did not sound like a good thing. Yin Nuashing was too lazy to use his brain to judge. This was definitely not good news. Just say it. Anyway, it's definitely not a good thing. That is indeed the case, but please cooperate. The young man shrugged and coughed dryly. In our exploration and observation, Xianyin does not seem to have her own karmic line. There is neither a karmic line that exists now nor a karmic line that has ended. If we remove our karmic line, this line will entangle itself when she sees us, so it does not count. I'm talking about the karmic line that exists before she sees us, other than us. Yin Nuashing's cheeks twitched. Are you saying that you guys are a collection of troublemakers who will forcefully pull strings filled with endless trouble for others the moment you see them? The heavenly gods of origin. Gasp. They suddenly felt like this young man's words were very reasonable, and they couldn't refute him at all. What could they do? Cough, cough. Let's not talk about us first. Yin Nuashing suddenly raised her head. Her pretty face was red from being hit by a brick, and her face was filled with resentment. No, I insist on saying it. You guys are a collection of super troublemakers. Ever since I encountered trouble related to you guys, I have become the number one person in the void. Wherever I go, trouble follows. Even when I go outside, I am forced to become an intruder. Trespassers, you guys are all troublemakers. The heavenly gods of origin. Although they felt that this might have something to do with them, they couldn't help but feel that this was definitely not just related to them. This young man was also very unlucky to encounter something related to them and forcefully pull strings of unstable karmic lines, which was why he was so troubled. Judging from the current situation, this young man was most likely about to be suffocated by these tangled strings. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes and let out a long sigh. All right, continue. The young man, he could still change the topic. To put it simply, when we saw that little girl, we did not discover anything or anyone related to her. It was as if she had appeared out of thin air. We also had many guesses, but the little girl was indeed immortal, and this was something that could not be disguised in front of us. Just look at yourself, and you will understand. You thought that you had been a human for so many years, but in the end, when you stand in front of us, you know that you are just a non-human whose true form is unknown, an existence that can be plucked out of the void to form its own category. Yin Nuashing, damn it, can you not drag me into this matter with Xianyin for no reason? I am not a human, nor do I intend to be a god. I am so sorry. So, when I heard you say that you are Xianyin's brother, even though I knew about this situation, I was very suspicious from the start. If it weren't for your half-dead and half-joking look, I might not have believed it. Yin Nuashing looked depressed and conflicted, her pretty face twisted like a walnut. So what kind of thing am I? In short, you are not a human. I said from the start that I am not a human. So, can you tell me something else? Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes. For example, you have confirmed that you were indeed active in the era when we were still alive, but not a single trace was left behind. The young man spread his hands helplessly. Judging from the current situation, Xianyin is the last clue that hangs on your sense of existence, of having existed in the previous era. It is very weak but very strong. Things related to us will be forcibly solidified due to the influence of our overly powerful rules and order, so that their existence can continue to remain in the void. For example, thinking life form, or thinking life form. Have you heard of it? Yin Nuashing shook her head. I don't know. It sounds like it has something to do with thinking. There is such a life form in the void, a life form born from thoughts. It sounds a little inconceivable. It is indeed inconceivable. After all, the method of birth is also a marvel in the void. It is a type of illusory life form that exists in the collective imagination and thoughts. In other words, it is an existence constructed through imagination. Life forms that know of its existence know that it is an illusion and an illusory thing. To put it more bluntly, they all know that it is not a real existence, but merely an imagination in their minds. Yet they let it continue to remain in their thoughts and thoughts. The young man took a sip of tea and paused for a moment. When he saw that the young man's expression changed slightly, he continued, "You can almost understand it now. Yes, it is an existence born from collective thought, but its sense of existence and existence are very weak because there is no rule in the void environment that life is born from the interweaving of thousands of thoughts. That is to say, thinking life form is also an existence that challenges the void rules. Its existence is in opposition to the void, and because the life that promotes its birth knows that its existence is illusory and delusional, the thought that binds it in turn, so its existence is very weak." Yin Nuashing frowned slightly and sighed in his heart. Countless lives have used their thoughts to create life, but because I know the cause and effect, I have taken away its existence. It's not hard to understand, but it's quite sad. It's another kind of life that challenges the rules of the void, and the result is probably self-evident. Such illusory life forms have their own activities as well, or they would not have been discovered by us. Moreover, such life forms are not particularly rare, at least not as rare as origin life forms. The young man waited for the young man's expression to relax slightly before he continued. Life is born from the interweaving of thousands of thoughts. Yes, there's no such rule, but it can be interfered with by humans. With the interweaving of thousands of thoughts as the foundation of the foundation, and other external forces as a higher level of force and cause and effect, it could construct a self or something. Higher life forms only need to give the thinking life form a stable meaning, and any higher life form could become the condition for a higher level. The thinking life form would find it difficult to maintain and strengthen its existence because its own existence has been denied by its own source, and all they need to do is replace the original source with a higher source. For higher life forms, such things are just as easy and difficult as drinking a cup of cold water. However, no matter how easy it is still an act of skill, isn't it? But when it comes to us, the young man pointed at himself and then at the people around him. Yin Nuashing saw that they all turned their heads and could not help but ask, passive skill. Yin Nuashing's thoughts rushed out like a flood. Don't tell me that all of you happened to come across a thinking life form and then solidified it into a tangible existence on the spot and suddenly popped up? The young man scratched his head. Oh, that child was the first-generation heir of my family's era. Although he fell in the war in the end, at least he had once lived. Yin Nuashing was speechless. All right, I got it. I totally got it. It's ridiculous. So, after going around in circles and using an example to explain your characteristics, Yin Nuashing rubbed her hands lightly. You want to say that because I am related to Xian Yin, and Xian Yin is related to you by karma, in turn, this karma also affects me. Is that what you mean? She nodded slightly. Yes. Yin Nuashing glanced at her. Her eyes were glittering as she continued thinking. Then I, at that time, was a certain unknown inhuman object that was born in the void. Even if I was an intangible existence in that era, even if my existence was so weak that all traces of my existence would be completely erased by the void if I were accidentally killed, I would still be able to reestablish my connection to the void in other situations because of this reverse karma. The thin life form that was once denied was sensed by the void again and then dragged back. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath. By the way, this can also explain why I have no memory of that era at all, because my karma has been completely erased once. The life history at that time has been completely erased. It is so clean that it is equivalent to me never existing in the Great Yuan realm. It is only later that the connection was re-established. However, that is already a matter of this era. It has almost nothing to do with the previous era. Very well summed up. The young man clapped his hands, took a sip of tea, and said, also, although it is said that I have been completely erased, it may not be completely true. After all, Xianin still remembers that she has a brother, although it is very vague. I guess that this faint karma impression is the most crucial reason for the subsequent impact. Oh, right, this is the new result of our communication 2 minutes ago. That's more or less it. Hey, don't put on such a strange expression. When things change step by step, when what is known and known is revised, the things that are related to it naturally need to be revised too, don't they? Furthermore, we are revising it on the spot. It doesn't take much effort. Yin Nuashing. Fine, your understanding is the top of the order of the void. There is no way to refute that. He sighed and tugged at his hair and bangs. Then he suddenly raised his head. His movement was so loud that it startled the heavenly gods of origin. When they saw that his expression was becoming more and more outrageous, they were all stunned. Wait a minute. My meager existence has been forcibly solidified, And you're even reversing karma? Don't tell me that we've already been in, the young man exclaimed and waved his hand. That's not the case. Our passive skill has not reached the level of sprouting and spreading leaves. Furthermore, karma is something that would not be affected if it was shallow. As for you, it was only because you were Shinine's only karma at that time, and the extent of the involvement went deep into your soul, that you were affected. Furthermore, your relationship with us is definitely because you had taken a glance at her when we were preparing to charge into the chaotic void all those years ago, even if it is a karma that transcends time and space. Hiss. Yin Nuoxing grimaced for a moment, before suddenly saying, Time. By the way, when did Xianin appear in your backyard? She quickly replied, the 37th or 38th era. Why is it at this time again? Yin Nuoxing was dumbfounded when she heard this time. It seemed that many things had unfolded around this time. Damn it, was this the turning point of fate? The kind of turning point where one fell into the abyss? The events of that era were either related to the 33rd or 34th era, or the 37th or 38th era. The former was the time when they charged into the chaos void and the all-out war broke out. The latter was the time when the underworld rebelled and joined the chaos void as reinforcements. Every time she thought of all these things happening at these 2 points in time, she felt a headache. So, I met your eyes in the 33rd era, and Xianin only passed by in the 37th era. Conservatively speaking, I might have died in the 37th era. Yin Nuoxing calculated the time until she became confused. Hiss, I met your eyes when I was still alive, separated by time and space, separated by yin and yang. What kind of ghost story is this? Am I seeing a ghost? That doesn't make sense, does it? This has to be said separately. It should be said that you met us in the 51st era and not in the 33rd era. After all, the youth clenched his left hand into a fist and rested it on his chin. Didn't you notice that the karmic line between you and us has always been in an illusory state? Even if there's a real connection, even if there's a real but illusory karma, in fact, we still do not have a real karmic connection. You only went to the ruins, saw the illusions of the past, picked up the relics we left behind in the void, and met the illusions we left behind in the broken land. Every change you made, every change in your actions under the influence of US can be explained as meeting our relics and obtaining some information, because only this part of the karmic connection is real and certain. The girl added softly, We have never truly met, and you don't even know what we look like, do you? The karmic entanglement in the broken land is ultimately just a broken karmic connection. Before the day we truly meet comes, our conversation with you is a conversation that transcends dimensions. After all, there is no such thing as time in this broken land, and we in this place are just broken illusions. Even the reverse karmic connection we speak of is more accurately explained in this way. Our profound laws and order first affected Xianin, which then accumulated enough changes, and the little girl herself affected you, who once had a karmic connection with her. After all, there is still a part of the karmic connection between you two, and although that part is basically contained in the brother she kept calling, and there's no more to be found, that alone is enough. You see, although it may be due to our influence, the actual executors are not us. It is your dear sister who pulled you back from the realm of almost complete disappearance. Yin Nuoxing was stunned on the spot. Thinking about it carefully, that was indeed the case. They did not actually meet in a real sense. Everyone was just sitting and chatting in a broken land that had no connection with the real world through time. Well, actually, it could be seen that he was sitting in front of a grave and chatting with a group of people who had passed away. Normally, the people in the grave could not lift the coffin, but they were not normal. When he thought about it this way, he suddenly felt that it was reasonable. After all, he was just a person who came to pay respects. The living and the dead would naturally not have karmic entanglements that would only appear when they meet. At most, it was an entanglement between people and objects. The young man shuddered and looked at Lin Sheng's strange expression. He could not help but say, I have a feeling that you seem to have some ideas that are not grounded, but are actually grounded in hell. Yin Nuashing's face was full of seriousness. I'm thinking about this stupid thing called facts. Being pulled back by Yin or something. Ha! Is he trying to say that an inadvertent act of kindness? He could not tell if it was a moment of kindness that led to him meeting Yin, save his life. Aya, this kind of saying, he did not intend to believe it, but reality was like this, wasn't it? According to his calculations, it was indeed because he had picked up the Yin that he did not die too thoroughly. Reality. Reality was a lousy show, lousy and indecent, because anything could happen, and most of them were lousy things that exceeded one's expectations. Whatever wanted to happen was up to it, and there was no need to follow logic at all because the void itself had no logic to speak of, and the void could even destroy logic. All in all, he had to quickly sort it out while his mind was still clear. He still did not know who he was, but he knew that he had died once, and died very quickly. Perhaps it was because his sense of existence as a non-human being was weak, so he died quickly and was quickly digested by the void. Or perhaps he had met some kind of overly powerful being and was almost crushed into pieces. In the grand elemental realm, well, actually he had almost died once, but he had forcibly extended his life once. His existence had completely disappeared, leaving no trace behind. As for some kind of overly powerful being, such as the one from the chaos, is it related to the chaos concept bodies this time? Well, the grand elemental realm, where he was almost killed by them, is certainly possible, but not likely. The youth nodded slightly at the mention of the chaos concept bodies, half agreeing with his guess. It's possible because you were killed by them, and it's certainly possible that your cause and effect were scattered. But it's unlikely because back then, we were monitoring every single chaos concept body, and not a single one was left out. Under such circumstances, if you were killed by a chaos concept body, then there's only one possibility. The chaos concept body had transformed the entire world group in one go. To ensure that we had never seen it, the killing could not have happened at close range, and could only have been accidentally killed by an area of effect attack. You're saying that I was accidentally killed? Such things happened every day in the void back then, but there was no such thing as accidentally. They were here to destroy the order of the void. The youth shook his head, and his eyes flickered. But in the 37th and 38th eras, the world group that was destroyed in one go, no. The voice came from her. She turned to look at him and the youth, and said flatly, in the 37th and 38th eras, the underworld rebelled, and the defense lines were reorganized and contracted on a large scale. As a result, the defenses were strengthened, and we gained a brief period of false peace and time to move. At that time, there were still wars everywhere, but there was no large-scale collapse of the defense lines that led to the invasion of the world group. Yin Nuashing's face darkened at that. I'm more inclined to the idea that you missed out on the chaos concept bodies. Didn't you miss out on two back then, when AI Hanyin was killed? That was true. After all, half of our forces were attacking the chaotic void, and the rear defense was barely holding on to the extent that it did not collapse. The youth spread his hands. But you didn't die then, did you? Even if we ignore the fact that your memory is blurry and you were pushing yourself, Xianyin was still immortal when she appeared in the 37th and 38th eras. She was not more than 1,000 years old. 1,000 is just a rough estimate, and I don't remember the exact situation. In reality, it was much younger, which is why we could more or less infer the time of your fall. By the 37th and 38th eras, we could be sure that there was not a single chaos concept body that was not under our eyes. The most important existence in the chaotic void, the enemy's general, and an existence equal to us. Do you think we would let such a thing escape our sight? Even if it was really out of our sight, it would only be when they had retreated to the chaotic void and had not stepped into the order of the void. The more Yin Nuashing pushed, the more confused he became. His mind was filled with who the hell am I? What the hell happened to me? Where the hell did I die? There's not even a scrap left. First, he was paraded as a ghost on the streets before he died. Then, he died without even dregs left behind. After that, The dregs were picked up and put together in a pile. Then they were sifted and put together so that they could still be used. He thought that he would be blessed after surviving a great disaster. Ha! He was not blessed, but he was convinced. He was convinced. He was really convinced. He was already shattered into dregs, yet he still had to encounter the worst thing in the void. And it was two of them. Conservatively speaking, when this era ended, he would have to split apart again. Damn it, he had cracked. Could he be any more miserable? So how did I die in the end? The young man shrugged. I don't know. You don't know much about this. You don't have any memories of this. It's already very good that you can piece together so many pieces of information to piece together this part of the truth. You have to figure out the rest by yourself. Yin Nuoxing's face darkened. He pointed at himself and said, I'm a guy who almost died in the Great Yuan realm. In the end, I was just a thing that barely survived after sifting through a layer of sifting. My memories and life history have been completely wiped out. You want me to figure it out with my head? Well, just wait. The young man waved his hand carelessly. Wait for time to pass. Wait for it to deliver everything related to you one day. Besides, you can go and find Serene. The little girl has already recovered the bits and pieces of her past when she entered the Premier realm. The premise is that you can find where the residence is. By the way, we don't know where the residence is now. After all, it has drifted far away. Yin Nuoxing's expression changed several times. He frowned and heaved a sigh of relief. He shook his head and said, Forget it. Aren't they still confronting them? For such an important matter, let's not disturb them for the time being. In the future, there will be opportunities in the future. If we can survive, let's wait for time to decide. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Then, his expression gradually became solemn. So what exactly are them? Chapter 1903. The existence of them had been tossed around many times when it was still just his conjecture. Now that he had obtained concrete evidence of them from the amalgamation of eyewitnesses and parties, then there were many things that were worth discussing again, and they were all related to them. Xian Yin and her residents were assisting the seals left behind by the origin heavenly gods to continue suppressing them. This was something that he did not expect, and he had no way of knowing. Really, if they did not tell him, perhaps he would not have known that there was a group of troublesome fellows behind the world of order until the end of this era, potential enemies. Don't mention that their seals were still maintained, and Xian Yin was still helping to suppress them. Don't mention such foolish things, and don't have such beautiful thoughts. Everyone in the world of order was unreliable, including the origin of order. You should be mentally prepared that them would come out when they charged into the underworld for the final battle. Then, he should prepare the corresponding defenses and improvise. It's good to be vigilant in this regard. Those fellows do like to do things in the dark. The young man nodded approvingly, but he helplessly scratched his ears and did not know whether to laugh or cry. But why do you have to emphasize that we're unreliable? There shouldn't be any order life forms in the world of order who are more reliable than us, right? Yin Nuoxing glanced at him. If you're reliable now, immediately, lift the coffin lid and jump out. The origin heavenly gods. This little fellow is just making things difficult for us. He knows that we can't be any more dead, and the coffin lid is tightly sealed, yet he still wants us to lift the coffin lid and jump out. This is not doing sit-ups in the coffin lid. How can he do something so difficult? Let alone him, they also wanted to lift the coffin lid themselves and solve the unfinished business that they had left behind. But they could only think about it. How about this? I'll lend you my body for a while. One of you can use my body to kill those bastards. If there's nothing to do, just do whatever you want. It's fine as long as the other party is dead. It doesn't matter whether I'm dead or not. All of the heavenly origin gods. This little guy was a wolf, a true wolf, Looking at their silence, Yin Nuoxing knew what they were thinking. She rolled her eyes and changed the topic. Then let's talk about something else. Look, the chaos left behind an underworld, a ghost thing that was suppressed but barely neutralized and the concept bodies of chaos. Especially the concept bodies of chaos. There are already 3 or 4 of them active. He had already exercised. Why don't you guys hurry up and get some exercise? Hong Kong is really hard to fight. I can't do anything to it. Oh, if that's the case. Well, encountering a chaotic concept body is just a coincidence and an accident. You accidentally encountered it, so it's not inevitable. Furthermore, every chaotic concept body can't move around, so you don't have to be so nervous. The young man shrugged. Yin Nuoxing stared at him as if he was an idiot. Do you think I should believe that? The young man. You guys should be more vigilant, just in case. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes. Listen, this guy can't even be sure. Damn it, chaotic concept body, the origin of chaos. If a chaotic concept body really appeared out of nowhere, how are they supposed to deal with it? There will be a way. The young man coughed dryly and tried to salvage the situation. Look, both the staff of creation and the staff of origin are in your hands. Even if there is only one of each, it would be enough. Even if some strange accident happened over there and a few of them escaped, there would never be a whole bunch of them. I swear on my divine soul that at most 2 or 3 of them would escape. You just have to think of a way to trigger the staff of creation's full power attack and destroy it with a torrent of energy. You should be able to figure out how to trigger the full power of the staff of creation and the staff of origin. Yin Nuoxing, do you really think that I can hold the staff of origin in my left hand, the staff of creation in my right hand, and a divine weapon in each hand, and take on 3 chaotic concept bodies alone? Boss, do you want to wash your eyes and see what level I am? Do you know how much pressure I'm under right now? Speaking of which, the pressure on me seems to have been increasing exponentially since a few years ago. Just the fact that there's at least one peak yuansher in the underworld makes me so worried that I'm going bald. Now, you're talking about a few chaos concept bodies. I'm going to kill myself. Forget it, I won't die. The gods of origin covered their faces and turned their heads away. To be honest, it's a little difficult indeed. Sigh, even if AI Hong Yun and the other kids worked together, they couldn't kill 3 chaotic concept bodies without paying a price. Although this little guy has gathered all their strength and is a little crazy, but his level is a little too low. It would be easy if he could enter the Premier Realm, but unfortunately, it's not that easy. They spent a lot of time exploring, but in the end, they still couldn't find a way to help him enter the Premier Realm. The loss of the divinity carrier, the loss of the life course, is equivalent to losing a part of one's life, and it's not something that can be fixed easily. It's not as simple as tearing up an embroidered cloth and sewing it back to see if there are any flaws. This is directly burning the cloth to ashes, and it's been thrown out for a long time. Even if the ashes are picked up and sifted, they could only look at it. It's a bit of a headache. Yin Nuoxing looked at them for a long time without saying anything, and then turned back to look at her. A certain tea-loving goddess sitting next to him saw him staring at her, and calmly turned her head away after a long while. Yes, she turned her head away. Don't pretend you didn't see it. Aren't you the second in command of the continent of origin? Shut up. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes and spread her hands. Chaotic concept bodies. Phew, that's fine, barely. They keep talking to me about interesting things every day, and at least they won't stab me in the back. I'll think about how to deal with that lousy thing when the time comes. So, about the other group of things that are even more dangerous, what are they? You've already changed the topic twice or thrice. The youth scratched his head awkwardly and deliberately changed the topic, only to be pulled back again. That's actually hard to say. Phew, mainly because I don't want to say it, but if I have to say part of it, you just need to know that they're a bunch of ingrates. The girl sighed and spread her right hand as she spoke with a very helpless tone, eating from a bowl while looking at the other side. Even though they had inherited most of the legacy power that we had temporarily kept in a safe zone, they accidentally ran into a chaotic concept body that had come out for a stroll. After a small fight, they despised the fact that their power was not a match for the other side. Seeing that the other side's situation was better than ours, They tried every possible way to jump over, although they got what they wanted in the end. To put it simply, they think that other people's things are better than their own no matter what. Even if they fart, they would praise it as sweet and then run away. It's fine if they run away. We'll just treat it as a pet that we haven't tamed. It's not as long as 80 or 100 eras, and while it's hard work, it's just a little bit, so it's not particularly heartbreaking. But to have them stab you in the back after running away, it hurts a little. The youth spread his hands and sighed, slapping his forehead in distress. That's why I said when we hurriedly formed the void of order that the order life forms born in a false stability environment are not too reliable. The last wishes of billions of order life forms in chaos eras. She held the teacup with both hands and murmured very softly. That is the last wish of those life forms, innumerable. It is the only wish of all life forms that had settled over 326 eras. At the time, you couldn't be so heartless as to abandon it, could you? That's right. That's right. The youth smiled bitterly and slapped his own head. After all, the wish of so many children, to see the world after the eternal war, to see a pure and peaceful world, ahem. You couldn't be heartless either, could you? No, I've cut it off. Still, even without the power I poured in, it still contains the power and inclination you all left behind. The outcome would not be reversed because of me. She looked up at them and said, the void of order that has become an established reality does not have the blessing I left behind. Very well. As expected of you, you're calm in the face of danger. You cut it off when it's time. The war has never ended or vanished. As long as it's not over, there's no way to talk about wishes that are merely false conditions. Even if they were hastily realized, they would only be deceiving themselves and others. It's just a castle built of illusion and imagination that would crumble into dust at the slightest touch. Everything would fall into the abyss, either back to where it began or straight into the depths of the abyss. You all are, and so are they. She took a sip of tea and looked at the youth and the others who were lowering their heads. But just like how I didn't stop you before, she continued, that is your wish and the wish of countless others. I have no reason to stop it, which is why I didn't stop it. Even if I can't agree, I won't deny it or complain. I'll just try to walk the path you all have chosen, but I can't hope for a perfect outcome. After all, it's not the most appropriate path I've chosen, and I can only do my best. Yin Nuashing sighed softly and shifted the teacup in front of her helplessly. Even though the outcome isn't that great, it's terrible. She nodded and was about to take a sip of tea when she suddenly put down the teacup and turned to look at her. What about you? Yin Nuashing was stunned. What? What about me? What do you think of the actions back then, or the void of order now? Yin Nuashing was stunned. She turned around and looked at her surroundings. After a moment, she looked up at the sky and fell into a daze. Of course, there was an answer. Of course, there was also a dilemma. Fake, impure, useless, and boring. Even though I can't rule out the fact that there are some things that are still acceptable, it doesn't stop me from wanting to cut it down. Boring, 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 boring. Yin Nuashing slowly lowered her head and twirled her hair in bangs. She frowned slightly, but I can't find a reason to do it. Maybe I have some concerns in my heart. Maybe I have some concerns. Maybe I don't think it's that bad or boring. In short, I want to cut it down, and I think it's okay to keep it. These two reasons are the same, and there's no difference. Maybe the answer is that it doesn't matter. As for when you asked me about the formation of the void of order back then, well, even though I had my own way of thinking, I probably couldn't really do it in the end. In the end, I should just let nature take its course. Yin Nuashing let out a sigh. It was fine to just think about it. Just like if Hui and the others, including everyone in the front line of the void, made the same decision to attack together. Even if he felt that it was inappropriate, he probably couldn't say anything. No, he would say it. After he said it, if there was no change, he might just rush up and do what he wanted to do, unless they could persuade him. Well, maybe not. This assumption was really troublesome. He still had to see what actually happened before he could make a judgment. If something really happened like 56 years ago, he might have to give up on his own part of the factors and wait for whatever to happen. After all, There was nothing he could do to stop it that time, right? The young man looked up. The light on his body flickered. Suddenly, he spoke with an inexplicable tone. You two are really the same. No wonder you could cross the space and time and meet each other first. Slightly different, but not by much, she said softly, which was considered as a response to his words. Yin Nuoxing turned her head and covered her eyes with her arm. Well, he was probably saying that from the beginning to the end, he must have left her mark first and then completed the rest step by step. This was acting first and reporting later. Bitter fruit, bitter fruit. After living for more than 300 eras, I still couldn't be ruthless in that moment. The young man pressed his hands on his head as if he was trying to break off his head. But after a while, he gave up after failing to succeed. Well, now the bitter fruit has become retribution. Just like a taunt, they are just one of the bitter fruits. Sigh. Yin Nuoxing looked at them and listened to their sighs. Although she could not see their expressions, but, as he said, she could feel the not-so-good aura spreading here. To put it bluntly, it was the accumulated anger, resentment, and hatred. It was exactly the same as some of the emotions that the origin energy spirits occasionally emitted. It was exactly the same, and even more intense. As he said, whether the heart was bleeding or not was another matter, but the heart was definitely filled with hatred and anger that could not be released. She definitely could not wait to tear them into pieces, but she did not seem to feel anything. No. She had already been in a daze for more than 2.5 minutes. It was rare to see her hands not holding on her cup, but instead curled up under the table. They were pinched together. Damn it, this was a silent supernova. She was someone who could cause the void to tremble when she went crazy, so how could she not have reacted at all? He estimated that even the combined hatred and killing intent of the 146 heavenly gods of origin wasn't as intense as hers. So, he quickly changed the topic. Back then, you all passed on the power within a safe range to him. Did that include the Staff of Creation, the Fort of Origin, and the other creations of order? Not the Staff of Creation. It's not like the Staff of Origin or the Fort of Origin. Xiao AI and the others could use the latter with a little effort. The Staff of Creation could only be kept in a low-energy state to release attacks in their hands. It was not very useful. Similarly, other than the Staff of Creation and the other creations of order of the highest level, the rest were all taught to them. When the young man said this, he became even more depressed. Some of the things were taught by him personally. He had personally groped out an ingrate who even took a bite out of them. That was really so. Yin Nuoxing pondered for a moment. She looked at the few heavenly gods of origin present and did not see the plainly dressed man. She scratched her head and said, So, the Fort of Origin in the space guarded by the obsession of the guy who beat me up was taken apart by them? What? Taken apart? The young man was stunned. His slightly dispirited and slightly bent appearance was swept away. Now, he straightened his back and placed his hands on the table with a very serious look on his face. You mean, the Fort of Origin in the space of the soul, subduing ring, was taken apart? Yin Nuoxing was also startled by his big reaction. Wasn't it put in by you guys? Yes, but it was perfectly fine when it was put in. The young man clenched his fists. I was the one who put the Fort of Origin there myself. There were many other things aside from the Fort of Origin, such as a complete set of the net of origin and order, a dozen staffs of origin, various levels of nodes, and various advanced creations of order. All of them were used to assist the forces of order in setting up defenses after our deaths. The path of the soul, subduing ring, also left behind the children of the second generation. You see, the power to assist the defense of order and the guide are a set, and could be said to be one of the most important paths among the 771 paths of retreat. Generally speaking, as long as the children set up defenses and not all of the chaos concept bodies break out, they could basically guard the void of order. Yin Nuoxing quickly raised her hand to interrupt him. Wait, we didn't find anything else apart from the Staff of Origin and the broken Fort of Origin. The Staff of Origin was also broken into pieces, and if I didn't have a life form with me, We couldn't have mistaken that pile of spherical things as the staff of origin and put it back together. And the guide you mentioned, TSK, don't mention it. Let's not talk about what the void you've passed away has become under the influence of the tides of chaos. They themselves would only be more unreliable. Now that they're holed up in our void front line, even ascending to the higher levels is difficult. I don't think they could lead the way. What are you going to say? The young man asked. I'm going to say, the void is in such a state. The last sentence. Yin Nuashing guessed for a while before saying, your children are still at the mid-level of the premier realm. They're currently working hard to climb to the high level of the premier realm. I don't know if they can reach that realm when we charge into the underworld. She looked up. Something happened to the soul-subduing ring. When Yin Nuashing heard this and heard the tone and saw the collective glint in their eyes, she knew that something had happened. Something big had happened. It was probably something so big that it could pierce a hole in the sky. Don't tell me. The soul-subduing ring was bitten by rats before it was opened, Yin Nuashing said with a dark face. The broken staff of origin and the fort of origin were done by them, and they even took the other things away after they were done. This. The young man made a gesture of wiping his sweat. If I'm not mistaken, it's probably possible. It seems like this is the only possibility. If it wasn't directly blown up, it definitely wasn't the fault of the conceptual bodies of chaos. The conceptual bodies of chaos couldn't find the soul-subduing ring's location. So the only ones who could find the soul-subduing ring and safely destroy the final defense of the Fort of Origin and the Staff of Origin are the only ones left are them who once controlled your power. Perhaps they even fought when they entered the soul-subduing ring. Yin Nuashing finished his words. This idea was exactly the same as what he had guessed at the beginning. Get past the defense line of the Fort of Origin, the Staff of Origin, and the Staff of Creation. Take what you can on the spot and smash what you can't. Hearing that the heavenly gods of Origin were all gnashing their teeth, Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes and wanted to smash his head on the table again. 771 paths, each leading to a dead end. This was not nonsense. This was supposed to be the power they left for the Order, but it was robbed first. This was outrageous. Damn it, he really didn't think of this. He had said that these things could be strung together, and that they could find traces of the same thing in other places that they couldn't find. I was wondering why you guys kept tormenting us, especially me, when you guys left something behind. Yin Nuashing continued to roll his eyes and point at himself. I was still nagging you guys, saying that you guys kept tormenting me even though you guys left something behind. You guys just wanted to test if the newcomers were related to the origins. Why not leave anything behind in the first place? The young man said, No. At most, it's just a little prank. How can we mess around when it's about the war between order and chaos? The reason why we didn't leave anything behind was because we were worried that leaving too many things behind would affect the current battlefield. So why would we want to cause a ruckus? There is indeed a corresponding test for order life forms, but those who could reach that position and see what we left behind basically passed the test. So Yin Nuashing was speechless. They admitted it. They knew how to play pranks. These old urchins, all right, he would believe that they would not play pranks on important matters. Although they were a little troublesome, they knew what they were doing. After all, the goal of killing chaos was an obsession that they had worked on for more than 300 years. It was impossible for them to play pranks on him when it came to such matters. Well, he did not expect that. He really thought that these old fellows liked to play pranks on him. The young girl suddenly slammed the table and stood up. Wait a minute, where's that thing? Yin Nuashing saw her big reaction, and his heart skipped a beat. What thing? You've poured everything out. Don't you see that thing? The young girl was a little anxious. Her hands were moving in circles in front of her eyes, and her hands were stretched out again. He could barely make out that she was trying to draw something in the shape of a long strip. Yes, a long strip, a long strip. A long strip? Something related to a long thing. Something related to origins, and not the staff of origins mentioned above. He could only remember it. Energy source? In the end, to prevent him from thinking differently from them, she added, A green stick. Yes, that's it. The young girl nodded excitedly. That's our special energy core. It can mobilize the energy of the entire void region from a conceptual level. It's a special core used to maintain the energy consumption of high-grade order creations. One core can fill the entire void region where the Fortress of Origins is located with energy. Great. Looks like we haven't lost it yet. There's still hope. Asterisk bang. Asterisk Yin Nuashing immediately slid to the ground and covered his face with his arms. His heart was dead silent. He even wanted to roll around on the ground and act shamelessly. What's going on? The young girl was shocked to see him on the verge of breaking down and about to collapse on the ground. She bent down and pulled at his arm, but he didn't budge. It seemed like he was determined to lie on the ground and not get up. The group of heavenly gods of origins used all their strength to lift up the young man who was determined to lie on the ground and place him on a chair. At this moment, the young man's entire body was so pale that he was about to melt into the air. This was a sign of complete exhaustion and exhaustion of his soul. They were all stunned by this and didn't understand what had happened. She waved her hand in front of Yin Nuashing. Seeing that he didn't respond, she directly pinched his cheeks. After pinching for a while, the young man trembled violently and came to his senses. What's going on? How could someone faint out of the blue just like that? Were you too excited? The young girl immediately asked upon seeing him come to his senses. Yin Nuashing stared at him with a lifeless expression. Yeah, I was too excited. I was so excited that I wanted to die. The young girl also came to her senses at this moment. Could it be that something happened? Yin Nuashing covered his face with his hands and replied in an unsure voice. What if I tell you that we do have an energy source? Oh, that's normal. That's what we left behind. It's fine if the rest is gone. If the Fortress of Origins is broken, we can just put it back together. The Staff of Origin and the Staff of Creation are still here, and we have the energy bars, so we don't have to worry about not being able to use them. Then let me tell you that we have an emasculated version. Furthermore, we picked it up from an accident in the netherworld. What do you think? The heavenly gods of origin, that thing is now in the hands of the underworld, and it has become a power that confronts us. The underworld has twisted the energy source so that it can provide energy for the abyssal death mist. They have been sending out troops to fight us day and night, and the node that corresponds to us is blown up by itself, and what popped out is a changed energy source. Do you think I should faint from excitement now? The heavenly gods of origin facepalmed. That's right. The soul-suppressing ring seems to have been looted beforehand, so there's no way that the energy bars would have been spared. All right, they knew why this young girl looked like she was about to give up. The thing that they had so carefully left behind for order had fallen into the hands of an ingrate. How infuriating. Phew. It seems that they opened the soul-suppressing ring one step ahead of us and got rid of everything, leaving behind only some things that are not worth mentioning to them. The young girl rubbed her forehead, and the radiance on her body dimmed by a few percent. Then, they dealt with it and finally handed it over to the netherworld so that the netherworld could complete the unfinished business of them back then. Phew. Now I know why you can't get rid of the netherworld, even though you have such tremendous power in your hands. I also know where the netherworld gets its inexhaustible power. I thought that they had created something like that energy bar that can forcibly extract energy from the void over a large area. So it turns out that they're using something that belongs to us. What happened back then? Yin Nuashing's expression softened slightly when she heard the key information. What happened back then? What else could it be? Chaos just wants to get rid of order. It's a very pure idea. The netherworld and they, who have joined chaos, are the same. The young girl drew circles on the table with her finger. It's just that now, they have all their connections with the De Yuan realm erased. They're suppressed in their own place and can't go out easily. The children in the residence are also helping to suppress them, so they can't do it themselves. They can only let the netherworld do it for them. The young girl took a deep breath. Once the netherworld destroys the void of order to a certain extent, and then goes to the realm of the gods. They will break free from their cage. Once they are out, it's equivalent to the concept of chaos breaking free from its shackles. When that happens, we'll lose the void of order that we're guarding. Yin nuashing, we're done for. All right. I feel an irresistible pressure. But why is it the realm of the gods? What does it have to do with the realm of the gods? The young girl waved her hand and replied casually, "Back then, in a hurry, I randomly found something to help suppress them. The realm of the gods is right next to us, and it's still relatively intact. It's much more beautiful than our continent, which was beaten to a pulp. So I took it and used it." Yin nuashing. Because of this random action, the realm of the gods has been plagued with disasters since then. Do you know that? And the realm of the gods. When the realm of the gods was mentioned, he remembered that this matter could be traced back. They entrusted the netherworld to the netherworld, and the netherworld was secretly stirring up trouble. So they entrusted the former divine Shadow clan to them. Good fellow. Like I said, this is a mess that's tied together. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.